Okay, you should be all set.
Good morning. You're here with the Energy Utilities and Technology Committee. I am State Senator Mark Lawrence. I am the Senate Chair of the committee. And with me today is my co-chair, Representative Berry. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. And then the members of the committee will go around the virtual horseshoe and have everyone introduce themselves. So we'll start off. Representative Berry, if you could introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Seth Berry, and I represent House District 55, which is Bowdoin, Bodenham, most of Richmond, and Swan Island on the Kennebec.
Great. And we'll go next to our House Republican lead, Nathan Wadsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. I am Nate Wadsworth. I represent House District 70, Southern Oxford County.
And next to Representative Foster.
Good morning, I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104, which includes the 5 towns of Dexter, Garland, Exeter, Charleston, and Stetson.
Now, Representative Grochowski.
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Grochowski. I represent House District 132, Ellsworth, and Trenton.
And then Representative Paige Ziegler.
Morning, I'm Representative Paige Ziegler. I represent District 96 in Waldo County, 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Great. Representative Carlo.
Morning, I'm Nathan Carlo. I represent House District 16, which includes the towns of Buxton, Hollis, and Saco.
Representative Sachs.
Good morning, Melanie Sachs. I represent House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Senator Vitelli.
Good morning, I'm Eloise Vitelli. I represent Senate District 23, which is all of Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County.
Representative Cuddy.
Good morning, my name is Scott Cuddy. I represent House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville. And every time it rains, my internet gets very slow. So hopefully I will be able to be with you all day.
I didn't think it ever rained where you were. Representative Kessler.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Chris Kessler, representing part of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
Great. And we have a nearly full complement of legislators today. So I'll do some of my preliminary information for people watching. This committee is made up of 13 people, 11 are here today, and you'll see people popping in and out. The reason is members of the Maine legislature often serve on multiple committees that are meeting at the same time, and they often have legislation appearing in other committees that they have to attend to. So it's no reflection on the bill and no reflection on their interest in your testimony. It's just a reflection on how difficult the legislative process is in a citizens legislature where we're all called on to do multiple things at multiple times. This is a public hearing today, and we will, after this public hearing, be having a work session. So a brief explanation on the differences between public hearings and work sessions. Public hearings is the first time we have a chance to publicly go over this bill, and the bill will be presented by its sponsor, then presented by co-sponsors, and then we'll entertain people speaking in favor of the bill, people speaking in opposition to the bill, and people speaking neither for nor against the bill. We've asked people to sign up in advance, so you should have contacted our committee clerk, Jason, to get on the list, and that gives us an idea of how many people we have signing up to speak. We do put a 3-minute limit on testimony, and we try to stick to that rule to give everybody the opportunity to talk on either side of the issue. And we encourage people, if they have testimony that goes beyond the 3 minutes, to submit that in written format. This committee reads a lot of the written format material. We go over it in great detail, so it doesn't mean your testimony will get any less attention. In fact, submitting it in written form often gets it more attention because it stays with the committee. All written testimony submitted will be posted on our website and available to committee members. I want to remind members of the public that this hearing is being broadcast live over the internet, and is also being taped and available on our website. So we ask you to be respectful when you testify. When you get up, identify yourself. Even if you think we already know who you are, identify your name, your town of residence, your place of residence, and any organization you may be representing. The importance of this is it allows members of the public who come back later and look at the tape to know who is testifying and who they're testifying on behalf of. After you present your 3 minutes of testimony, members of the committee will be allowed to ask questions of the person testifying. And that can go on for whatever length the committee desires. I want to mention that people in the audience, people who are not panelists, will not be allowed to question the people testifying. And if somebody gets up after you and negates something you says or has something you want to rebut, once you've testified once, you're not allowed back up to testify again before the committee. So I would ask you, if you have rebuttal information that you want the committee to have, please submit it in writing and we do go over it. So the work session, the public hearing is a very kind of formal process to give every member of the public an opportunity to weigh in on this bill and submit information of importance to the committee. If it looks like one side is going to go on more than half an hour, which I don't expect today, but if it were, we would try to alternate between sides to give each side a chance to testify up front and not have to wait around for the entire hearing. Excuse me. I expect today's hearing will be, and we just have one bill, be relatively straightforward. On some day, we will schedule a work session on this bill, and we'll be going into a work session on another bill later in the day. Work sessions are largely the time after the public hearing where the committee amongst itself works on the bill, discusses the bill, makes changes to the bill, and decides how to proceed with the legislation. It is not another public hearing, and public is not eligible to testify by request, only by request of the committee. So if a committee member asks for additional information and it's not another opportunity to testify, it's usually because the committee has some specific information it wants to get that did not come out at the public hearing. So I'd encourage you at this public hearing, if you have information you want the public to consider for the work session, submit it in writing, either after the public hearing, but sometime before the work session. And work sessions will be advertised similar to public hearings. In that way, we can move the testimony on as expediently as we can. We have a lot of bills to deal with this session, so we need to give attention to each one of them as we go along. With that, we'll go to our first bill. And so, you know, members are operating on multiple screens, so you'll often see me looking away, looking on other screens to get other information. So it's not a evidence of disinterest in your legislation. It's just in this Zoom format, we often have to do things on multiple ways rather than simply having the committee clerk bring paperwork over to us. So the first bill we have to hear today is LD 1894. It's sponsored, excuse me, by a member of the committee, Senator Vitelli, who will be presenting it shortly. And it's an act to support municipal broadband infrastructure through incentive and competition. The chair will recognize the sponsor of the bill, Senator Vitelli.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. Good morning, Representative Berry, fellow members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Eloise Vitelli, and I represent Senate District 23, as I've said. And I'm before you today to introduce LD 1894, an act to support municipal broadband infrastructure through incentives and competition. As a resident of Arousik, a small rural community, a lack of high-speed, reliable internet has been a challenge for my neighbors for many years. Lots of challenges with this technology. After so many years of frustration, Arousik finally partnered with nearby towns to form a nonprofit dedicated to achieving connectivity in our community. After facing several challenges to accessing funds as a group of towns, the Arousek Group decided to pursue funding on their own. In late 2019, Arousek was awarded a grant by the USDA, it was a grant plus loan, and announced that they would be developing a publicly owned broadband network that would provide connectivity to every household and business in town. This fiber network can run through the town's existing infrastructure, and completion of this project will be a major step forward for Arousek and its residents. We might even get broadband when it rains, Representative Cuddy. At a ceremony accepting the federal USDA grant, the governor came to town and spoke of the importance of partnerships among local, state, and federal parties in getting the job of connectivity done, especially in our rural small communities. Arousek owes its success to date to such a partnership and to the dedication and ingenuity of a small group of volunteers who decided our town needed connectivity despite the fact that it wasn't economically advantageous for private companies to bring that connectivity to us. We all know the importance of connectivity in this day and age, so I won't dwell on that. I think we've all seen it many times over during this last several years. This bill seeks to replicate Arousek's story across the state by making more resources available to municipal and consumer-owned utilities who want to bring connectivity to their underserved residents and businesses. These entities have the best insight about their community and its needs and the ability to connect with people in their towns, and they often have existing infrastructure that can help support fiber networks. When private companies calculate that expanding into these small rural communities is not in their best financial interest, towns and their residents should have the opportunity and resources to pursue it on their own. This bill is also intended to help these entities access match funding, which is often required for federal or other funding opportunities. Providing match funding ensures these communities can access the remaining funds needed without drawing resources away from other needs within the town and without placing an undue cost burden on residents. As the result of some additional conversations about this bill, I also have an amendment for you to consider today. There's certainly further work to be done to make sure that this bill is achieving its intended purpose without any negative, unplanned consequences. I'm looking forward to doing that work in partnership with the committee and with experts like Peggy Schaefer, who I suspect is in attendance today, and who I hope will be happy to answer many of your questions, more technically competent than I would be able to. This bill, however, is a critical piece of the puzzle in connecting all of Maine to high-speed, reliable internet and ensuring that Maine's small and rural towns can do their part and not get left behind. I thank you very much for your time and your consideration. And again, I'd be happy to entertain your questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of the committee for Senator Vitelli? Representative Wadsworth.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My 6th year on this committee, and people know my position on government-owned networks by now. I feel like this fund, there's no guardrails on this fund to prevent overbuilding. And so I guess, do you think that undermines the mission of our newly established broadband authority?
Thank you for your question, Representative Wadsworth. I would actually say that I'm a proud co-owner of what is now the Arousek Broadband Authority. So be that as it may. I'm not sure I'm best equipped to answer your question, but I think there will be others who can help us set up those guardrails as needed. So I appreciate you bringing that concern forward.
Thank you, Senator.
Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence, and thank you, Senator Vitelli, for putting the bill forward and for your testimony today. I love a lot of what this bill is doing. But I'm sort of, I think, similar to Representative Wadsworth's question. How do you see the Internet Access Expansion Investment Fund working with the Maine Connectivity Authority? How do you see it fitting into that ecosystem? And if that's not a great question for you, and there's somebody else behind you to answer, that's great too.
Well, actually, I think it is intended to fit in. That's why in the amendment, we, instead of creating a new fund, chose to build on an existing fund, the Gigabyte Fund, but target the funds, which I'm still looking for, to tell you the truth, to use as a match. And in my years of doing development work, funders often look for other participants in their grant making. So certainly in federal cases, sometimes the federal government will look for a match contribution. And the idea here is that this fund would be able to provide up to 25% of a match requirement for any other funding for a project.
Well said, Representative Cuddy.
I am. Thank you, sir.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator, for presenting the bill this morning. I do have a couple of questions, and I'm assuming that we are really discussing your amended version. So I'm going to direct my questions to that. First of all, I just want to clarify, it looks like the funding from the original bill has changed so that monies will be held and distributed by the Connect Maine Authority. And secondly, one of the big changes that I noticed was you removed investment-owned utilities from your original bill, struck them out. And I don't know that I think that that's the way to go, but I'll ask you why we did that. And I'll ask you also, or maybe somebody else that's waiting can answer this. I read testimony that indicated that in other areas where that was done, there was concern that the utility in question treated themselves more fairly, than, if you will, than others who needed to connect to their poles. However, I believe PUC and others can take care of that issue. It would seem to me, and I don't know if you consider this, that if a investment-owned utility has this ability, along with others, that although they would have to, let's say, charge themselves the same pole mounting fees cost that they would any other broadband company, that money would go towards the reduction in cost, if you will, to the income that is offset to those utility customers or ratepayers for their electricity supply. Do you see where I'm coming from on this? And do you have any thoughts on it? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Foster. I'm always appreciative of your thoughtful questions on this committee, and this is no exception. I have a general sense of where you're going with your question. I'm not sure I'm in a position to give you a very clear answer to that, but just to say that I'm open to further discussions on who the participants in this project should be.
Any follow-up, Representative Foster?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Cuddy, if you're done with your questions, if you could lower your virtual hand, that would be great. Senator Vitelli, you say you're going to be presenting an amendment. Has that been made available to the committee yet? And is it on our website?
I don't know if it's on the website, but it should have been made available to the committee.
I see our analyst, Lindsay Laxon, shaking her head. It is on the website. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's on the website. It was also emailed out to the committee and the interested parties list on the 31st of January.
Okay, so members of the committee should have it in their email, and members of the public can see this proposed amendment on our website so they know what we're discussing. Any further questions from the committee for Senator Vitelli? Seeing none, thank you very much, Senator. I do not see in the attendees list any of the co-sponsors, so I'm assuming we do not have co-sponsors to get on our to be on our bill to testify on this bill. And I apologize, I have to explain to people I'm operating off 4 screens and 3 keyboards and 2 mice today, so I'm kind of shifting things around to see everything. But Jason, if you could promote over the very first attendee who wishes to testify in favor of this bill while I bring up the list you sent to me of the people who are testifying today. Who is that going to be, Jason?
Just one moment.
Thank you. See, I thought I was the slow one.
From my list, I should have Ed Glazer.
Ed Glazer, thank you. I'll wait for him to join us. So the process going on is that Jason is beaming people across from attendees to a panelist so we can have them speak to the committee. Okay, I'll bring my video back on. And the chair is pleased to recognize Ed Glazer. Ed, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and what organization, if any, you're representing. And I'll remind you that when you get into your testimony, I'll be starting on one of my screens, the 3-minute clock.
Thank you. My name is Ed Glazer. I'm the mayor of Rockland. And I'm here representing the Maine Mayors Coalition. Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and distinguished members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Ed Glazer, and I'm here on behalf of the Maine Mayors Coalition to support LD 1894. The Mayors Coalition is a nonpartisan group formed in 2012 and currently includes the mayors of 9 Maine communities: Augusta, Biddeford, Lewiston, Portland, Rockland, Saco, Sanford, South Portland, and Westbrook, with a combined population of nearly 250,000. The coalition advocates for state and federal policies that recognize the important role that Maine cities play in providing vital services to people across the state and positive impact our cities have on the economic strength of our state. Affordability and accessibility still remain the largest hurdles for broadband equity in the state, and solving these problems requires a multifaceted approach. High-speed internet access should not be determined by a zip code, especially in a COVID-19 environment that relies on virtual connections more than ever. LD 1894 would assist municipalities in building broadband capacity where capacity is inadequate today. The communities in our coalition are always seeking ways to attract people to our cities, communities, and the state, and we recognize the critical role broadband plays in achieving this goal. Having quality broadband means access to remote work and learning opportunities, access to healthcare via telehealth, and increased economic opportunities for current and future businesses. Too many communities have limited or no choices for broadband. Opening these funds to create new networks would provide residents and local businesses with alternatives that will spur additional competition while expanding access. The state will receive $250 million to strengthen broadband across federal programs, through federal programs. The newly created Maine Connectivity Authority released a strategic plan to use and oversee these federal funds, and we urge the committee to support all municipalities as we work to improve access to broadband. Access to fast, reliable, affordable broadband is absolutely critical to the future of Maine, and this legislation is a step towards achieving that goal. Some examples of broadband expansion projects by our members include the following. Here in Rockland and with 3 neighboring communities, we were part of a 2022 study by Axion Technologies evaluating the feasibility of regional municipally owned broadband utilities. According to the report, the need for a municipality-owned utility is based on the fact that the current internet service has some of the highest pricing in the nation, service levels that are not meeting our customer demands, and outdated technology, and they're unresponsive to community needs. The report also anticipates that 2,800 people would sign up for service in the first year and increasing every year thereafter. Sanford constructed Sanford Network Fiber, a municipally owned 45-mile high-speed fiber optic network that connects to large employers in the area. It's the largest municipal broadband network operating in Maine. South Portland is seeking proposals to develop a community-wide open access broadband network with the goal of delivering high-speed internet for all city residents. Thank you for your time and attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ed. Are there questions from the committee? Ed, can you just give me a brief explanation of the difference between the Mayor's Coalition and the Maine Municipal Association? Are there major policy differences between the two?
There aren't probably major differences. The difference is that as you know, Maine has a few different forms of town government. There are a number of cities in Maine, and all of the cities have mayors. We tend towards being larger population centers. In many cases, we're service center neighborhoods that are, as you know, I'm sure, that service centers have a different economic structure than many of the more rural communities. So we represent more of the metropolitan areas.
And do you know if MMA has taken up this bill and is considering a position on it?
I haven't heard, no.
Okay, thank you. Great. So we appreciate you coming and testifying, and you can beam, Jason, you can beam Ed back across. We're ready. There were one person testifying in favor of this bill other than the sponsor. So we'll now go to people against the bill, and I'll ask you to beam across Ben Lucas from the Maine State Chamber of Commerce and Jim Mitchell from Comcast. Okay, Ben, I see you there. Why don't you go ahead?
Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, members of the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Ben Lucas. I live in Portland, and I am here today representing the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. The Maine State Chamber of Commerce is testifying in opposition to LD 1894 and the proposed amendment. We appreciate the intent of what the sponsor is trying to accomplish, but as drafted, there are several concerns with LD 1894. First, this legislation promotes creating consumer-owned water and electric utilities to own and operate broadband networks. This takes away the operation of the networks out of the hands of the experts. Secondly, this legislation does not encourage public-private partnerships, and in the Chamber's opinion, this is the best way to expand broadband. LD 1894 also presents several challenges looking into the future. As technology changes, broadband networks will need the flexibility to adapt to new technologies and infrastructure. Making sure our broadband infrastructure is future-proof is critical to the long-term benefits. As we are making investments now, it is critical to still be thinking about the future. In our opinion, the companies who are experts will best be able to adapt to these changes much more efficiently than municipal-owned networks who will run the risk of having to increase rates to reach the demands long-term. If LD 1894 were to pass, there is nothing to protect against the overbuilding of infrastructure and networks that currently exist. We also believe that the state should not be directing funds to areas of the state where high-speed data is already available by encouraging so-called open access networks. The Maine Connectivity Authority was recently established to help make sure broadband reaches the unserved areas of our state, and LD 1894 would not help accomplish that and puts at risk our state and federal dollars. To conclude, the Chamber of Commerce has long been a supporter of broadband expansion and investment into Maine. In our 2018 Making Maine Work survey, one of the top issues we heard from businesses in Maine was the need for access to reliable broadband connection. In that same report, the Chamber then called for $100 million of investment into broadband for the state. We now have had over $250 million invested into Maine, and the Chamber is still committed to expanding broadband access. Unfortunately, we do not believe LD 1894 would do that. We'll be happy to work with the sponsor, the committee, other interested parties, and stakeholders to find a solution going forward. But as drafted, the Maine State Chamber of Commerce is strongly opposed to LD 1894. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify today. I will be available for the work session, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Ben. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Grochowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lucas, for being here. This is a question, and I think you're newer to this committee, maybe the legislature. I'm very strict that written testimony should be submitted, and I haven't seen yours yet come through the portal, so I hope you'll be planning to do that today and going forward for the record. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I apologize, Representative. I will submit it right now.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning.
I wanted to just better understand a comment that you made in your testimony about leaving it to the experts to own and manage fiber networks. As I understand it, when municipal entities invest in their own broadband infrastructure, they're typically contracting with a private company that will usually install and operate that network. How is that not run by experts who are versed in broadband?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Representative. Thank you. As I further elaborated on in my testimony, it's our opinion that, the companies who have, been working in this industry for, decades now will be best served to help broadband expansion throughout the state. I agree with your point that, they do bring in experts, the different municipalities, but when you're talking about, potential, consumer-owned water districts or water utilities, owning and operating, broadband networks, people who work on those positions are, appointed to the board of trustees for those water districts. I think they're, very knowledgeable and experts in that field. And I just don't know if they are in broadband. That's not to say they can't adapt to that and make those changes into the future. But just in our opinion, we believe that the companies who have been doing this have built the infrastructure in place. They need to work with the municipalities in a public-private partnership. That's how we feel.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Representative Kessler? And I apologize for not having my video back on, but I'm going between one of my 4 screens. Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. Thank you, Mr. Lucas, for being here to testify on this today. And regarding your answer to Representative Kessler's question, if the companies that are doing it have been doing it for many, many years and decades even, and yet we still have major holes in our broadband technology. So how does leaving it in their hands improve things when it's been in their hands for decades?
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I would just point back to what I said with, public-private partnerships. We've seen some examples of that mechanism being, successful in various municipalities in various areas in the state. And that's how we feel. The public-private partnerships will help expand, broadband access for as many Mainers as possible. Like I said, we're certainly happy to, come to a stakeholder group, work with the sponsor, work with, some of the ISP companies, have the chamber involved, different municipalities to try and find a solution moving forward. But, again, just as drafted, I think there's several concerns in LD 1894, and we would certainly like to work to try and address some of those concerns. Because we are committed, we are committed to broadband access. We've been advocating it for well before my time joining the chamber, and we are committed to reaching that because it plays a critical role. I don't need to explain to this committee the importance of connectivity.
Any follow-up, Representative Cuddy?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Ben? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ben. If you could beam him back across and bring Kate Foy from Charter Communications over while we have Jim Mitchell testify to the committee. Jim, you want to go ahead with your testimony?
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and members of the committee. Jim Mitchell on behalf of Comcast. In anticipation of Representative Dahowski's admonition, I'm hopeful that the committee has written testimony that, though it has my name on it, was actually prepared by Chris Hodgson of Comcast. Chris had a conflict today, which is why I'm here in his stead. Comcast is respectfully testifying in opposition to Senator Vitelli's LD 1894 with a focus on the amendment that was recently posted on the 31st. Our opposition is really based upon the principles that have guided both federal policy and Maine policy, that is to focus resources on unserved areas first. more investment everywhere is a good. And although the state coffers are in an enviable position with lots of revenues for policymakers to make vital choices about how to improve the lives of the citizenry of our state, those resources nonetheless are not unlimited. And the question, I think, for the committee to grapple with is passage of this legislation potentially leading the executive branch as it seeks to implement the policy, taking its eye off the ball of focusing both public resources and potentially partnering with private resources to ensure that rural Mainers have access to high-speed broadband. Clearly, private companies have difficulty making a go to get a return on their capital when household density is insufficient to support their investment and ongoing investment, because it's a capital intensive industry to build and maintain high-speed, high-quality internet access. Nonetheless, obviously the public sector has a vital role here to ensure that unserved populations in Maine get an opportunity to join the mainstream and enrich their both cultural lives and their economic life. And that is vital. And I think that's what Peggy Schaefer and the folks at the authority have been focused on. And I think that work is what needs to continue. In this instance, I think if you look at the top of page 3, subsection E, that language itself essentially communicates that overbuilding is not only permissible, it's encouraged through this legislation. And that's the fundamental flaw, we believe, with the legislation. There's also, and again, I think it's important that I couch my terms carefully. There's a concern that Mr. Hodgson has raised that Maine could potentially get itself at cross purposes to federal policy and legislation, and therefore may disqualify itself from access to all the federal programs. I want to be careful. That needs to be analyzed further, and your analysts would be well equipped, I'm sure, to give you an opinion about whether or not that is a risk. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my remarks, and I'd be pleased to try to answer any questions. I'm hopeful that Chris Hodgson will be available for your work session, so that if you have technical questions, you can turn to someone who actually knows what they're talking about, unlike the current speaker.
Thank you very much, Jim. Are there questions for Mr. Mitchell from the committee? Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for your testimony. You mentioned that the resources that have become available are not unlimited. I'm wondering, just to make it clear to me, those resources we're talking about, where are they coming from? Are they not taxpayer dollars or eventual taxpayer dollars?
They are indeed taxpayer dollars, not all Maine taxpayer dollars. We're a net recipient, I believe, of some of the federal dollars that have been invested over the last 24 months to get our economy back on track. Nonetheless, they are taxpayers' dollars. And candidly, your committee, I think, probably has more influence over Maine's economic future than any other committee in the legislature, because you're dealing with such essential elements of a robust economy. Utilities, cable, phone, internet, all of this is so central to a modern economy. And so you, of course, are stewards of those public resources, and adopting carefully calibrated legislation that ensures those resources are expended as wisely as possible. And I don't disagree with the mayor who spoke earlier. Many urban areas of Maine need more investment, more capital investment to enhance the broadband experience for their citizenry. There's no doubt about that. But how do we prioritize the segments of Maine to get these dollars and invest them appropriately, adequately, robustly? That's the critical question here. And I'm not sure this legislation does that guidance adequately to ensure unserved populations are dealt with first.
Representative Foster, any follow-up?
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there other questions from the committee for Mr. Mitchell? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming this morning, Jim. And we'll beam Jim back across. Jason, I'll ask you to bring over, I believe it's Simon Thorne. I apologize, I got that backwards. And we'll turn next to Kate Foy from Charter Communications. Kate?
Good morning. New role, but I'm excited to be back in front of the EUT committee. It's nice to see you all, albeit virtually, but great to see all the friendly faces in the Brady Bunch squares. Chairman Lawrence, Chairman Barry, and members of the Energy, Utility, and Technology Committee. My name is Kate Foy, and I'm here today representing Charter Communications. Charter appreciates all the efforts that are already underway in Maine to expand broadband, including the efforts of Senator Vitale and the ongoing work of the Connect Maine Authority. We look forward to collaborative relationship with the Maine Connectivity Authority and continue to value our relationships with the Maine legislature and the administration. Charter believes that every resident in Maine should have reliable access to broadband. This is why we must testify today in opposition of LD 1894. In light of the influx of federal funds that can be used for broadband, Maine should not squander the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to connect every unserved household and anchor institution in Maine to broadband service. As drafted, LD 1894 makes this goal harder, not easier to achieve. Maine has an opportunity to solve the expensive and difficult problem of connecting its most difficult areas to reach to broadband, and it would be irresponsible to waste federal and state dollars on areas that already have access when there are areas that do not. The Connect Maine Authority has been a strong advocate of deploying funds to unserved areas of Maine. LD 1894 undermines this important policy goal. You will also likely hear more about my next point from others today, but Charter also urges the legislature to add other important guardrails for any utility that would own a broadband network. These guardrails are things that other states have imposed to protect against anti-consumer incentives, and that I've included more in my written testimony that I submitted this morning. These should include a structural and legal separation of a utility and its broadband affiliate, with broadband service only permitted through the affiliate. Profits from the utility should be prohibited from being used to subsidize the broadband affiliate, and utilities should be prohibited from requiring that consumers subscribe to their affiliate's broadband network as a condition of receiving other utility services such as electricity or water. In closing today, the goal of the state and federal broadband infrastructure funding is to close the digital divide, not subsidize areas where broadband connectivity is robust and routinely upgraded to keep ahead of evolving consumer usage and demand. There is an enormous difference between having no broadband and having broadband. If a community has robust broadband service from a private provider, the government shouldn't step in to subsidize higher speeds when there are communities that lack access to broadband. The idea that Maine could divert funding from unserved communities undermines the principles of which this once-in-a-generation funding was created for. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Kate? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good to see you all.
Good to see you all. And I believe after Simon, who I apologize for inverting his name, we're going to go on to Andrew Butcher. So if you could promote him across, that would be great. So Simon, why don't you go ahead and present your testimony?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just before he begins, just a friendly reminder that the use of the chat is strictly for committee staff and personnel for procedural purposes, and we ask that people not post content there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll also point out that we do not use the staff for posting things of substance on bills. It's more of scheduling questions and things like that. And the reason is that all our texts, all our transmission are subject to freedom of information requests, and we're trying to limit the chat to being related to technical issues or scheduling issues about the Zoom. So with that, go ahead, Simon.
Good morning, Chairman Lawrence, Chairman Barry, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Simon Thorne. I live in Farmington, Maine, and the Senior Manager of Government Relations for Consolidated Communications.
On behalf of Consolidated, I'm here today to offer the following comments in respectful opposition of LD 1894. I would also say that I'm pleased to be in front of you today, even though I have not connected directly with many of you. I look forward to working with you in the future. Consolidated shares the state's desire to expand broadband to all Maine people in the quickest, most cost-effective ways possible. We are a strong supporter of broadband growth in Maine, and we are in the midst of an aggressive 5-year plan to upgrade fiber to more than 450,000 locations in the state. In addition to this, Consolidated has received funding through the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund to upgrade extremely rural and completely unserved locations to fiber over the next 6 years. Consolidated has engaged with the Connect Maine Authority, building out 1 gig symmetrical service to Long Island and Eastbrook, and currently has NTIA grants pending for an additional 11,000 locations to be upgraded to fiber to the premise service if those grants are awarded. The pandemic has certainly demonstrated the need for reliable high-speed internet, and as such, the state of Maine will see a dramatic increase in fiber to the home solutions from many providers, including Consolidated Communications. From Consolidated's perspective, this bill is a little unclear in its purpose, along with its proposed changes to the Municipal Gigabit Fund. It appears the amended bill seeks to earmark funding for only a certain group of recipients, i.e. municipalities that receive federal grants. To the extent that is correct, Consolidated does not support this bill. The state of Maine has earmarked significant capital from both state and federal funds to help expand broadband. Those funds should be awarded in a fair, competitive, and transparent manner to the best projects without regard to the entity seeking the funds. It should be the goal of the state to get the most people connected as quickly as possible in order to maximize digital participation and opportunity. At the present time, all entities mentioned in the bill are able to apply for Connect Maine grant funds, and the Maine Connectivity Authority is likely to provide a similar opportunity. There does not appear to be good reason to earmark certain funds to a particular group. The Maine Connectivity Authority is in the process of getting their initial operations and programs off the ground. We are excited about the opportunities the MCA will provide to the Maine people, and we look forward to being a productive partner in its success. The MCA should be allowed time to establish priorities and rules, which may include earmarks for matching federal grants. But these programs should be available to any party that may receive federal grants and not just municipalities. This will ensure that the MCA and Maine people are presented with the most competitive, cost-effective options possible. For this reason, we respectfully offer this testimony against LD 1894. I'm happy to answer any questions now and in the work session that you might have.
Thank you very much, Simon. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to go on to testimony neither for nor against. And I'll ask you to, as you beam Simon back across, if you could beam Colin Haley from GWI over too as well. And we'll go on to our first person testifying neither for nor against. I'll just remind people that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people testifying neither for nor against. And the purpose of this testimony is to truly testify neither for nor against on a piece of legislation. Because we have so many testifying at the 3-minute rule, I'm going to try to get through everyone before we take our morning break, but we usually take a morning break somewhere around 10:15 or 10:30. So if we can get through all the neither for nor against by 10:30, I think we can take our break in between the hearing and the work session. With that, we'll go on to Andrew Butcher. Andrew?
Good morning, everybody. Very nice to see you. Thanks for this morning's conversation. Greetings, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, members of the Joint Standing Committee for Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Andrew Butcher, and I serve as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority. I will try to make my testimony brief today. I had a shorter testimony before I listened to some of the prior comments, so it's gotten a little longer. I will resubmit my testimony in writing and apologize for my chat earlier. I've incorporated that into my testimony. As you know, the Maine Connectivity Authority is a new agency charged with planning, developing, investing, deploying, and managing comprehensive broadband solutions to ensure universal access, adoption, and affordability for all Mainers. There's exciting progress to share relevant to the Connectivity Authority outlined in our January 15th report to this committee, and will be elaborated further at a hearing later this month. While there are many intriguing concepts within LD 1894 in line with the state's connectivity goals, namely seeking to incentivize and support locally driven broadband efforts through the capitalization of the Municipal Gigabyte Fund or encourage regional broadband utility district, questions remain. Questions such as where and how funding will be allocated to the fund and the implications for integrating advanced communications technologies with electric or water utilities are worthy of further research. For these reasons, we believe it would be helpful to better understand if delivery of retail or wholesale broadband service would overburden existing utility easements held by electrical or water utilities, and if so, what statutory adjustments are needed to enable the intent of the bill. Such an evaluation could provide a framework to ensure investments maximize alignment with existing utility requirements and infrastructure. This bill is helpful in revealing that there are more questions than answers at this point, and we're at the Connectivity Authority happy to help contribute to more insight and information in the next year. And continued gratitude to Senator Vitale for her leadership and willingness to continue finding new ways to support and sustain Maine's broadband infrastructure needs. I will add, in listening to testimony so far this morning, I have a few observations. We're talking about too many issues at once. We're talking about municipal models, utility infrastructure and implications, and state funding. None of which in their own right derail the state's strategy towards achieving our connectivity goals and priorities, which underpin the very charter of the Maine Connectivity Authority, and none of which derail our federal funding sources. In fact, federal funding articulated through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act explicitly encourages such models. So again, I think there's more information to garner through this process, and I look forward to contributing to the conversation.
Are there questions from the committee? Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Butcher, for being here this morning. When I look at this bill, the amended version, consider the testimony, is it fair to say that the Connect Maine Authority already has the ability or will have the ability, as you finalize your structure, to do much of what is already included, or what the intent is that's included with this bill? Am I correct there?
Thank you, Representative Foster. I think I'm hearing two questions at once, so let me try to dissect. Your question was, does the Connect Maine Authority have the capability? I would let Director Schaefer speak to that in her testimony. My understanding is that Connect Maine does have the current capacity to be able to implement some of the intentions outlined in the bill and in the amendment. And the Maine Connectivity Authority, as we work with Connect Maine, will continue to support and find the right fit of those capacities and guardrails to achieve the intended outcomes. So I'm hoping I'm answering sort of both questions at once.
Any follow-up, Representative Foster?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may. So, Mr. Butcher, I guess the utility piece of the bill aside, allowing utilities such as water districts to own this, currently, and I believe this was true, has been true with Connect Maine, you will have the ability, if a community comes to you and wants to put up their own broadband system, you will have the ability to help them through grants and matching funds financially as it stands now. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. The Maine Connectivity Authority will have that capacity. Though this bill, I will say that though this bill does not undercut, as was previously mentioned, does not undercut that capacity or that authority.
Representative Foster, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Butcher, for being here and for your testimony. I wasn't sure that I understood what you said regarding the availability of federal funds and how this will affect it. Are you suggesting that this bill would be neutral to our ability to receive federal funds or positive?
Yes, thank you, Representative Cuddy. There was a comment earlier, I believe by Mr. Mitchell from Comcast, that this would jeopardize federal funding. And I wanted to clarify that this bill does not jeopardize our federal funding sources. And to your question, if anything, this bill and the capitalization of the Municipal Gigabyte Fund would serve as a positive force in serving as a match for current and future federal funding sources. We are still awaiting guidance from the U.S. Department of Treasury as to if our American Rescue Plan funding will serve as an adequate match for the infrastructure investments and jobs funding. And so as we move forward, considerations around the role of state-derived funding will serve as an important match component for future competitive grants.
Any follow-up, Representative Cuddy?
No, thank you, Senator. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Butcher.
Representative Ziegler?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I took my hand down because Representative Cuddy stole my questions, and I will always hold you in lower esteem for that, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Ziegler. It's a good thing. It's a good thing we all treat each other so well, is all I can say, and anticipate each other's thoughts. It makes things streamlined for the chair. Okay, since there are no more questions for Mr. Butcher, we'll beam him across. We'll go on to Colin Haley, and in the interim, if you could beam Deirdre Schneider across for the Maine Public Utilities Commission. Colin?
Thank you, Senator. It's great to see all the floating heads this morning on Zoom. I appreciate the time to talk with you all today. Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and the members of the Energy Utilities Technology Committee. My name is Colin Haley, and I handle external relations for GWI. GWI, based out of Biddeford, develops, designs, and builds and operates fiber optic networks in Maine and other New England states, and I am here today to testify neither for nor against LD 1894. While GWI builds and operates privately funded networks, a huge part of our growing business is partnering with municipalities and municipality broadband utility districts, or UDs. In Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, we serve roughly 60 rural towns and cities by developing, financing, designing, building, and operating municipal networks. And a vast majority of these communities that we work with are served by utility districts currently. We strongly support the intention behind the bill, the idea to strengthen UD model in Maine, but we believe that the practical impact is actually the opposite. Section 1 of the bill, we believe, is unnecessary and will cause more problems than it actually solves. Currently, Maine has a robust broadband utility district, or BUD, and the legal framework behind it, which is instantiated by the Maine statute Title 30-A, Section 2203, that already allows for the formation and operation of BUDs. A number of Maine BUDs already exist, and we are currently working with many local communities to form more. Currently, there is no need for further legislation in this area, we believe. There is also no public benefit in extending further PUC oversight of the BUDs. Effectively, the PUC already has oversight of BUDs through its pole attachment, ETC provider oversight, and other powers. BUDs are also subject to significant federal oversight, and Section 1 would extend potentially conflicting PUC oversight not only to electric and water cooperatives, but also existing broadband utilities which are operating functionally at the current time. The ability to use grants from the fund as a match for other sources of funding is great, and we hope this portion of the bill moves forward. However, the most important aspect or facet of this from our perspective is actually finding a funding source for the fund. Thank you very much for your time, and I am happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee for Colin? Seeing none, thank you very much. And if you could beam Colin back across and then beam over Neil Goldberg from the Maine Municipal Association. And we're pleased to have before us for the first time our former analyst, Deirdre Snyder. And I just want to remind committee members that since she was not technically a member of this committee, she does not have to bring treats to the committee. But it is great to see you again, Deirdre.
It's great to see you all again, and this is a little nerve-wracking, so bear with me. Chairman Lawrence, Chairman Berry, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Deirdre Schneider, and I'm the Legislative Liaison at the Public Utilities Commission, and I'm here to testify neither for nor against the sponsor's amendment to LD 1894 on behalf of the Commission. While we are testifying neither for nor against, we have some concerns with the language in Section 1 specifically of the amendment. The terminology utility delivery system is unclear in the context in which it is used in the amendment. The amendment specifies that a consumer-owned T&D utility, a consumer-owned water utility, or a regional utility district may provide broadband or other internet access services to the public on the utilities delivery system. However, it does not define this term, and this term is not found elsewhere in Title 35A. While on its face, it may seem clear that what this is meant by this, when read in the context of the amendment, it raises several questions. In the case of a T&D utility, does it mean that the utility can only provide broadband in the electric space on poles, or for a water utility only via the pipes that convey water to customers, since those are the utilities delivery systems? We do not think that is what is intended, but without clarity of what the utility delivery system encompasses, these questions remain. If moving forward, we request that the committee amend the bill to provide more clarity regarding this terminology. Another area that is lacking in clarity is in regards to the rules the Commission is directed to adopt in the amendment. It is not clear to the Commission what specifically these rules are meant to regulate. The amendment specifies the Commission shall adopt routine technical rules governing the provision of service that may be provided on the broadband or other internet access systems. It appears from the wording that the amendment is directing the Commission to regulate the broadband or internet access systems services specifically. The Commission notes that we do not regulate broadband, and depending on what is intended by the amendment may be preempted from doing so. Also, depending on what is intended, it may be setting up a system where some providers are regulated while others are not, and where some customers have some protections and other customers do not have depending on their provider. If the amendment is proposing rules in order for the Commission to protect existing utility customers from assuming risks associated with the utility providing broadband service, or to ensure that the utility rates do not increase because of the utility choosing to provide broadband service, then this rulemaking directive is unnecessary. The Commission has the authority under existing laws and rules to ensure the protection of utility customers from these risks. For example, there are several water districts that are both a water district and a sewer district, as well as water utilities that are departments of towns. The Commission has oversight of water utilities, but does not regulate sewer or other operations. In these cases, the entity will have to continue to maintain accounting that will separate revenues and costs for all operations. Furthermore, Section 713 in Title 35A specifically states that a utility may not charge its ratepayers for costs attributable to unregulated business ventures taken by the utility. Lastly, the Commission is not aware of a particular issue that this amendment is trying to address. Currently, the Commission is unaware of an explicit prohibition in Title 35A or Commission rules on these utilities providing broadband service. We understand that many of these utilities are formed by a charter, and charters specify the purposes for which the utility is formed. Therefore, a charter may need to be amended to allow for the provision of broadband or internet service. If the intent of the amendment is to provide a blanket allowance for all these utilities to provide these services without amending a charter, we are unsure if this in itself would alleviate the need to amend the charter. There may be instances in which the charter needs to specify the authority the utility has. We have no comments on other portions of the amendment related to the Municipal Gigabit Broadband Network Access Fund, and be more than happy to answer any questions or provide additional information for the work session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. Are there questions from the committee? Aaron Foster, you're surprised, Deirdre?
I'm not. I was hoping I would go unscathed with the questions.
You should not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Point taken, I guess. Welcome, Ms. Schneider, and congratulations, I guess, on your new position, but here's what it's all about, right?
True.
I do have a question. Considering the original bill and or the amendment, any of these utilities that were granted the opportunity to form a broadband and manage a broadband cooperative in their communities, that they would still not fall under PUC regulation for that portion. That would still be regulated federally. Is that Am I correct there? In other words, let's say a consumer-owned utility, or in the original bill, a investment-owned water district decided to go this route if this bill were to pass, that would not fall under your purview. Is that correct?
Correct. The commission wouldn't be regulating the broadband or the service of that. It may come into play if somehow the activities of them providing broadband was impacting the utility function. So they were, say, using rates of the existing utility customers to sort of pay for the broadband or things like that. It might come in that context, but that would be more of the utility issue than the broadband provision issue.
Thank you.
Representative Kessler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Deirdre. Great to see you.
Good morning.
So I just need to get clarity here. So existing law does not prohibit investor-owned or consumer-owned utilities from owning broadband infrastructure or any other sort of business venture. Is that correct?
There's no explicit prohibition on provisions of broadband of these utilities. There are provisions that talk about unregulated business activities of a utility or an affiliate, and there's a section of law that deals with it. Again, it doesn't prohibit it, but it has some constraints on there and provides a process for complaints and things of that nature. And it's more to protect the utility customers from those activities. But as far as we are aware, there is not an explicit prohibition on this now.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Representative Kessler, any follow-up?
No, wrong button. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Deirdre from the committee? We're letting her off much too light.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But this is just your first time here, so we will not be so kind in the future.
And I'll be back for the work session.
Representative Cuddy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did have a question for Ms. Schneider. Is it better working for the PUC or working for EUT? I need an honest answer.
Of course, working for EUT.
Great. And we do expect a detailed memo for the work session.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, if you could beam Deirdre back across and beam Nick Batista from the Island Institute over, and we'll go on to Neil Goldberg from the Maine Municipal Association. And I apologize, Neil, for asking my questions to Ed, but I didn't realize that you would be on later. I hadn't looked that far down my list from MMA. So go ahead.
Well, I appreciate and happy to hash through any of those same questions again. To begin, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Neil Goldberg, and I am providing testimony today neither for nor against LD 1894 on behalf of Maine Municipal Association. This is a great opportunity to say that I just came from a meeting with county and municipal officials that were saying, you know, we've heard about some intent to create a grant matching or local matching program to help us expand either municipal consumer-owned utilities, i.e. broadband, as well as some of these private public partnerships. And it was really great to be able to tell them that, yes, this is actually happening. There is a real possibility, and it has a work session today. So with that said, municipal officials really do share the belief that broadband infrastructure needs to be expanded. In order to do so, there should be some financial, not necessarily incentive, but some assistance to help move things along. And the proposed amendment to LD 1894 seemingly does that. It creates that pathway for municipalities to secure meaningful funding for these broadband systems. And so for that reason, MMA really happily supports this legislation. However, it does bring up a few concerns. And the first came from our risk management services. Our RMS department is responsible for ensuring a fair amount of municipal utilities around the state, delivery systems, that is, utility delivery systems. And there's some concern that because providing internet services or broadband services is not an essential government service under law, that there's actually some conflict with ensuring these utility pole attachments. I know you've heard that before for other bills. But in specific, RMS is saying, we're not sure we'll be able to ensure these public systems if this happens. And there were two solutions. The first is a pretty heavy lift, which is amending the Maine Tort Claims Act to include the delivery of broadband as an essential government service. That could bring out a lot of potential parties to that conversation. The second solution that was brought forward from RMS is to amend the bill to limit the municipal exposure of a pole attachment to the limit in the Tort Claims Act, which I believe is, I think, $400,000. But something to consider, if you want these utilities to get market rate insurance through their frequent provider, i.e. MMA's RMS service, something for this committee to consider for that. The last two concerns are a little bit less severe, but worth bringing up. One is that this is going to send public dollars towards a cause that doesn't necessarily have a public benefit. A lot of municipal officials are most intent on creating affordable broadband, not necessarily expanding it to every area willy-nilly. So they just want to see that this is going to create more affordable broadband, and they are all on board. The last concern is what exactly we mean by anchor institutions. I know that definition is still to be determined, but depending on what that is, it could make some of these projects infeasible, depending on, again, where those anchor institutions are in relation to a project being proposed. But with that said, a very optimistic opportunity here that municipal officials are eager to see go through with success. So thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Neil. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. And we'll now go on to our next individual who's going to be testifying, Nick Batista, but I'd ask you, Jason, to bring over Peggy Schaefer in the interim. Nick, why don't you go ahead and testify?
Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, members of the committee. Nick Batista, Chief Policy Officer at the Island Institute, testifying neither for nor against this bill. Since 2015, the Island Institute supported over 80 coastal and island communities, as well as several communities further inland in expanding broadband. Very much feel the pain of the communities that were awarded USDA funding, Aroostook, Monhegan, Roque Bluffs. They had projects ready to go in 2019 and are still struggling to get those projects off the ground because of onerous USDA funding requirements that aren't designed or sized appropriately to solve the broadband challenges in our smallest communities. It's a huge problem. In terms of this bill, I would urge caution here. The Institute is supportive of communities who want to form utility districts, as well as communities who want to work with an existing provider or bring in a third provider who doesn't already have infrastructure in the area to provide service. Biggest challenge we're seeing in supporting communities with moving forward with utility districts around local capacity, local decision-making, and funding. State regulatory changes aren't top on the list of things that we're hearing about, at least that's our what we hear. And I would just urge caution about making regulatory changes without also having the technical assistance or support for communities on these fronts. It's important to note, at least as far as Maine, we're talking about public ownership of the infrastructure, which means an ISP doesn't have to carry the infrastructure on their books or their balance sheet. The operator of the network is still an ISP. This is one flavor of the public-private partnership. And I completely agree with the Maine State Chamber that these should be public-private partnerships. What those look like, what kind of flavor they have, and how much there's a balance between public and private is a really good question. The private partner in these utility models, they're a private internet service provider. They still provide the service. They light the networks. They operate it. All sorts of roles for the private sector. Public utility doesn't need to generate revenue to provide a return to its shareholders or cover the costs of depreciation. I know there's been much conversation about government-owned networks, and would urge you to consider the other half of the equation, which is What level of government subsidy are you willing to provide to a publicly traded company when it comes to buying down the cost of a revenue producing asset? That's the other half of this conversation about government-owned networks or government-owned infrastructure. I would say, opponents to the legislation have raised important points about how far do we stretch public funds and what are the best ways to do that. These are networks. Many communities have places, streets, small areas that are left behind by existing infrastructure investments. Some of the opponents of the bill would suggest that the best way to connect these people is to give their companies a capital subsidy. Communities that are working on this issue and looking at it, many of them are on the front lines of these conversations, are exploring a variety of options that make sense for them and their community and lead to different long-term outcomes for their community. And finally, I think it's come up a couple of times. Affordability is a hot topic in the state right now. One of the key ways to address affordability is to look at the capital structure for these projects and what are the expectations from private companies for their return on investment, the timeframe they need to get that return on their invested capital. Publicly owned network doesn't have the same pressures to meet shareholder expectations. We can debate whether that's good public policy or not, but it does directly bear on the cost of service to main customers. So thank you for considering this bill.
Thank you very much, Nick. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Nicole, was that a question? Yes, sorry, Nick, stay around. Jason, please keep him here.
Sorry,
and Representative Grochowski has a question.
Thank you. Sorry, I was like, where's my button? It's one you've heard before. I know, Mr. Batista, and just to be fair, to all people testifying who are not members of the public solely, if you could submit that in writing, I thought you had some really helpful comments in there. I would love to have that for the record in my review next week.
Very, very happy to comply with the Grochowski rule.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any follow-up, Representative Grochowski? And please note, we do not call that a House rule. We call that a Grochowski rule. Okay, if you could beam Nick back across and beam Steve Hudson over, and we'll go on in a minute to Peggy Schneider. Looking at the clock, I think we're going to have enough time to complete all the testimony, neither for nor against, on this bill. So with the committee's indulgence, I'll shoot forward to do that and try to complete that and then give us our break. So Peggy, why don't you go ahead?
Sorry, I thought you were taking Steve first. I'm just saying, I'm changing my name to AAA Peggy. I'm just changing my name. So I'm Peggy Schaefer. I'm the director of the Connect Maine Authority. I live in Vassalboro, and I'm here to testify neither for nor against 1894. At Connect Maine, we're really dedicated to the expansion of broadband in Maine, which is really key. It's a key priority of this administration. We welcome the sponsors' efforts to facilitate this expanded connectivity through legislation, and we're always glad to seek improvements to our laws regarding broadband expansion. And we do appreciate the sponsors' work to end that, to work with providers and communities and our office to make that happen. The original bill had a lot of problems to it, but I think I have my comments on section 1 are similar to what other people's are, which is I don't think it's needed. It adds a layer of regulatory structure that we don't currently have and don't currently need. Our broadband utility districts, we have about 5 of them, have their own charter. There is extensive conversation, believe me, happening at community levels about whether to do this work and how to do it. And the communities that decide to move forward with a broadband utility district do it for a number of reasons. One of which is scale really matters in this work. And so a utility district is a way for multiple communities to work together to figure out how to build the infrastructure. They are operated by a charter, they have bylaws, they have, they work with the community leaders to figure out what the representation of the board should be. There's excellent models for water and sewer utilities that most of broadband utilities follow. The third piece about broadband utilities, which we are just figuring out, is it offers a new way to add to the capital stack that it takes to build these networks. And because bond banks, revenue banks know about utilities, right? They know water and sewer. They recognize this as a structure that can provide a revenue stream that can pay off a revenue bond. So it provides an opportunity for multiple communities to work together to help build a network, which doesn't end up on the property tax per se. It ends up on a revenue stream that's generated by the infrastructure that they build. So I think that's an important piece about when you think about broadband utility districts, about why communities are thinking about doing it. And additional, as Deirdre said, additional regulatory structure by the PUC is not really going to help that process or really add anything to the conversation. And I think that's the important piece. It doesn't, you haven't heard anybody say that additional regulatory structure is going to add anything to this conversation. The second piece is Section 2. That the Municipal Gigabyte Fund has gone through this legislature twice now, when it was first enacted, and then last year we amended it again. So it has broad, it has accepted by this legislature. It is a policy tool that this legislature has put in place. It is under our statute, Connect Maine statute. So the guardrails in our statute about, we call them different things, right? One of them is provider outreach, which is you have to reach out to the existing provider to make sure they're not going to expand in that area. That all of those guardrails would also apply to this fund. It doesn't sit separately, it sits as part of Connect Maine. So the concerns about the guardrails that we have that are good wouldn't apply to this fund is actually not true. All those guardrails that people like are in place also for this fund. So I think that's important to remember. And the final two pieces are one, the American, I get all these federal names mixed up. The IIJA, the infrastructure bill, does require a 25% match. We're still looking at what the NOFO isn't out yet about exactly what that's going to look like. But there may be times where because these are such rural builds, putting together that capital stack that actually makes the build work, which is going to be public funds, it's going to be private funds, and it might be revenue funds. It might be helpful to have a little pool of money to help with that 25% match. And that's what this would do. Essentially, all this language says is if there's money in this fund, which is the big if there's money in this fund, if a town is using this money to match a federal grant, then they don't need to come up with an additional 25% to draw down from this fund. This fund can be used as a match for the federal money. And we've done that.
Peggy, we're over the 3 minutes.
Okay, good.
So I'd ask you to save your questions for submitting them in writing or for questions or your answers for questions from the committee. So with that, I'll see if the committee members have any questions. For Peggy Schaefer, Representative Kessler.
Thank you. Good morning, Peggy. Can you just give us a quick overview of, like, when it comes to the Gigabit Fund and when it comes to Connect Maine and now the new broadband authority, when it comes to a group of municipalities who want to get a broadband network of their own started up, where do they go and what are the steps, and how do they touch each of those entities?
Well, that's going to take longer than 3 minutes, but we'll just shorten it up, right? Right now, Connect Maine, because we have the capacity and we have the staff, the MCA has one person, so there's two of us. We have a grant open right now for applications. Some of that is state bond money, about $6.5 million of it, and additional MCA is going to put in an additional $10 million. So that round is $16 million. So we're working in partnership on this current round. In future rounds, which will happen probably after the beginning of the fiscal year, and this will be a conversation we can get to next week when we both come in to give our annual report. I think it's next week. we are going to be working jointly. That funding will, that application process will go through MCA and not Maine Connected, whoever we are, Connect Maine. We are still doing all of the community planning pieces. So that piece, because we have funding for that, that piece is going to continue for a while with us.
Other questions for Ms. Schaefer? Seeing none, thank you very much, Peggy. If you could, Jason, bring over our last person, Bill Harwood, the public advocate, and we'll go on to Steve Hudson before we hear from Bill. Steve?
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. I just wanted to first start off, I always hate being between this committee and their morning break, but I'll try to be quick. I'm Stephen Hudson. I'm an attorney with the firm of Purdy Flaherty. I'm here today to provide testimony on behalf of the Telecommunications Association of Maine, TAM, neither for nor against LD 1894. As some of the newer members of the committee may not be aware, TAM members serve some of the most rural and the smallest communities in Maine and have done so for some cases for more than 100 years. Our members are solidly a part of their local communities and integral parts of the economic development mosaic of those communities. We do appreciate the fact that Senator Vitelli got her amendment out in advance of the hearing, and we do think that that amendment is an improvement over the bill as printed. I think we generally support many of the comments you've heard from the neither for nor against category of folks. Our big focus is trying to make sure that whatever this committee does, it seeks to promote the creation and the enhancement of public-private partnerships, allowing TAM and other private companies such as DWI to create new and stronger relationships with the communities they serve. So we would suggest, in addition to some of the changes that have been suggested to improve the bill, that you consider strengthening language to create preferences for such partnerships where you can leverage existing private systems and networks and existing private capital programs with public financial and planning support to better serve local communities. We're ready and willing to work with the sponsor and other advocates of this bill to make such changes that the committee so directs. Now, this is not with all the money coming in, this is not a question of picking winners and losers or using public dollars in a manner that you've heard some concerns that might disadvantage private providers. It's a moment of bringing public entities together with those private providers who are willing to partner as the best way to not only achieve the goal of expansion, but to ensure that those new systems that are deployed are able to be cost effectively maintained and further expanded in the future. We're happy to answer any questions now or at the work session.
Great. Other questions from the committee for Steve Hudson? Seeing none, thank you very much, Steve. And we'll go to our last person testifying neither for nor against, our public advocate, Bill Harwood. Bill?
Thank you, Senator Lawrence. I don't want to stand between you and your well-deserved break coming up, so I'll try and keep it brief. My name is William Harwood, and I'm the public advocate. I've managed to survive my first week, and this is my first opportunity to testify before you on pending legislation. I am here to testify neither for nor against on LD 1894. We reviewed the sponsor's amendment distributed earlier, and I'll comment on that language. We did have concerns with the investor-owned utilities as they were included in the original printed bill. The reason for testifying neither for nor against is our concern about Maine utilities venturing into unregulated businesses. In general, we expect Maine utilities to focus exclusively on serving their ratepayers and not becoming distracted by entering into competitive, unregulated businesses. This committee and the legislature addressed this issue many years ago when Bangor Hydroelectric entered the home security alarm business. In response to many complaints, the legislature enacted Section 713 and the PUC adopted Chapter 820 of its rules. In both cases, the statute and the rule address the risk that the utility might use its name recognition, its financial strength, or its size to engage in unfair competition to the detriment of unregulated entities being forced to compete against the utility. To address this concern, I urge the committee to further amend the bill to explicitly authorize the PUC to oversee any utility entering the broadband business. Specifically, the authorization should direct the PUC to address the risk of the utility engaging in anti-competitive behavior, such as providing favorable pole attachment terms to its broadband business to the detriment of other main businesses that do not enjoy the advantages of being a utility. The OPA is supportive of the expansion of broadband in Maine, but the role of this office regarding the proposed legislation is to ensure that regulated utilities are acting in the public interest. Thank you for your time and attention and consideration. We look forward to working with the committee and will be available for the work session to assist the committee in its consideration of this bill.
Are there questions from the committee for the public advocate? Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Howard, for being here and for your testimony. Just to clarify, when you suggest that the PUC should have oversight of any utility that's should take this on, you're referring to how it might affect the other parts of that utility's business and not specifically the broadband portion. Is that correct? That's correct, Representative Foster. There's two issues here. One is to make sure that it doesn't bleed over and affect the rates or service of the regulated utility, and that's certainly one concern. But the other concern, where we saw many years ago with the home security alarm business, is there are advantages that the utility has. Simply its name recognition, its bank account, its size, its strength, its that may give it an opportunity to unfairly compete against other businesses in the broadband industry that don't have those same advantages. And that's something we have to be careful about and watch. These utilities have a steady flow of revenue. They have a balance sheet. They have resources that other non-utility businesses don't enjoy. And to set them into a competitive environment may not be in the public interest.
Any follow-up, Representative Foster?
No, thank you.
Okay. Other questions for the public advocate, Representative Kessler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Bill. Can you just please clarify again with this home security issue and the laws that were put into place? Are you saying that that circumstance then we created as a legislature and subsequently the PUC those guardrails to protect ratepayers from separate business activities of a utility?
Yes, exactly. That those are there, and they deserve to be looked at carefully in light of this bill. And there may be some room for improving the bill to reference those and make sure that the PUC does that. I mean, the obvious question of pole attachment, to the extent that the utility we're talking about owns poles, we have to make sure that there is no opportunity for that situation in which they would favor their own broadband business over others who might seek to attach wires to their poles. But that law is there. It has a number of features. One of them is you can't use your name. So the XYZ utility district would be required to come up with a new name. They would be required to do it as a separate corporation. There's a lot of pieces there that are intended to create separation between the utilities activities and operations and those in the unregulated competitive market.
Okay.
Representative Kessler, any follow-up?
Yeah, I guess I would just a comment that, for example, if an investor-owned utility wanted to get into the broadband realm and they were concerned about having an advantage due to name recognition, I think that is a tough road to hoe in this current state right now. So that's it. Thank you for clarifying those things for me.
Other questions for the public advocate? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our testimony on this bill. Am I correct, Jason? We have nobody else who's been added to testify?
I don't have anyone else on the list here.
Great, thank you very much. So I'll declare this public hearing closed. We'll go on to having our mid-morning break. So we'll be back at 11 o'clock. If you could put up a notice, Jason, that says we'll be back at 11 o'clock and we'll be going into our work session. I'd ask people to mute their screens and turn off their video, and we'll see you all at 11. Okay, I'll ask members if they could to come back visually online so I can make sure we've got a quorum. So I see we have three now, four with Representative Carlo, Representative Grahowski, five with Representative Cuddy, Senator Vitelli, Representative Grahowski, or Representative Foster. If you're within hearing voice, if you could come back on so I can verify that we have a quorum of 7 people for the work session. Give it a minute. If somebody could help me out by texting the 3 of them to see if we can get them back online. They may have gone to other committees. If somebody could reach out to Representative Wadsworth too, to see if he might be able to come back online. I just need the quorum of 7 faces on the screen. Representative Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification. Could we hear the report from our analyst and have a discussion and then make sure we have a quorum for the actual vote?
I'd like to have a quorum before we start the work session, so there are no questions and nobody questioning the procedure. So we have 6 now, I see. We just need 1 more. There, we have Representative Foster. So I'll declare a quorum is present, and we'll now, I'll accept a motion to go into work session.
So moved.
Moved by Representative Barry. Is there a second there to going into work session? Seconded by Senator Vitelli. All those in favor, just show your hands. Okay, we are now headed into work session, and let me bring up one of my many screens. To refresh my memory. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to ask Lindsay to introduce herself and Jason to introduce himself to the public.
Good morning. My name is Lindsay Laxon. I am a legislative analyst for the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis.
Jason?
I'm Jason Allerding, and I'm the committee clerk for Energies, Utilities, and Technologies.
Great. So we didn't do it at the public hearing because we utilize our staff more during the work sessions, but Lindsay is from the Office of Policy and Legal Analysis. She provides the technical information to us in a nonpartisan manner. Jason is part of the Legislative Information Office. He's a committee clerk, and his role is to coordinate all the information coming in and out of our committee and coordination with information passing to the Senate and to the House and between the committee and the Senate and House, and to keep all the records of the committee and to keep a schedule for us when we get into public hearings. Lindsay's role, Lindsay will do during a public hearing, she will take copious notes on what has gone on at the public hearing of who testified. She's going to summarize it to us for this work session, and she will also make note to us if any members of the committee had questions for people who testified where they had specific information they wanted to bring back to the work session. As I said earlier, a work session is not another public hearing. We have people and attendees who are interested in this bill who are there and available to committee members if we want to ask them a question. And if we do want to ask a question, we will beam them across and have them answer that question. And I'll try to restrict what they say to the question that was asked. And it's not an opportunity for another public hearing of their position on the bill. So with that, we now have one bill to work on today, and it's LD 1847. It's sponsored by my co-chair on this committee, Representative Berry, and it's an act to prohibit a public utility from terminating or disconnecting service to a public safety facility without advance notice and approval. And if I'm right, Lindsay, this is the first time we worked this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So why don't you bring up on your screen your analysis, and we can go over it with committee members so we can all get our memories refreshed about the public hearing.
Excellent. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. And I just emailed out my bill analysis as well, so you should have that in your email. So LD 1847, this bill establishes a notice requirement and authorization process that a public utility must follow before terminating or disconnecting service to a public safety facility. It requires essentially 60 days notice prior to the termination or disconnection, and the utility must obtain written authorization from both the PUC and the Department of Public Safety. The bill also allows the PUC to engage in rulemaking in consultation with Department of Public Safety and a statewide organization representing municipal interests. And the bill referenced the definition of a public safety facility, goes back to Title 30A, and I've provided the definition for you. We had a public hearing on this bill on January 25th, and the committee received testimony from a number of individuals. There we go. There we go. The proponents say that this bill is necessary because of at least 2 instances in which an electric utility's billing error resulted in site visits from the utility to terminate service, and the 2 instances discussed related to volunteer fire departments. And the proponents say utility service is necessary for equipment used by a public safety facility, and it is possible that if there is a termination, the facility may not know about it until an emergency arises. Those individuals who testified in opposition or neither for nor against said that the PUC has existing rules that already regulate disconnections for water utilities and T&D electric and gas utilities. They also said that the bill will create additional costs and administrative burdens for utilities and may present challenges in identifying those accounts that would be subject to the notice and authorization requirement. In the testimony, there were a few suggestions that I want to note for the committee. One was to clarify the definition of a public safety facility, possibly by reference to existing lists that Maine's County Emergency Management Agency has. And several individuals pointed out the bill as drafted applies to all terminations and disconnections, not just those for unpaid bills. So it does not allow for immediate termination or disconnection in case of emergency or at the customer's request. The committee had several questions during the public hearing. Representative Berry was looking for information regarding the consolidation of CMP's back office functions. Representative Foster asked about possible costs for consumer-owned utilities, and I believe Deborah Hart is here and may be able to speak to that. Representative Foster also asked for information regarding how many customers in CMP's territory would be subject to this notice and authorization requirement. So how many accounts would be affected by this? And Representative Berry expressed interest in hearing from the Public Utilities Commission on Rule 660.
Great. Thank you very much, Lindsay.
You're welcome. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Great. So the procedure I like to follow in these work sessions is to first have us direct any questions to Lindsay to clarify her analysis, and we'll get that presentation. And then to move on to the questions that were identified by the committee that they wanted to specifically ask people during the work sessions. And it looks like we need to hear from the consumer-owned utilities, from CMP's representative, and from the PUC to get some of those answers. And then once we've completed that, we'll open it up for a committee discussion of the bill in general and any potential motions on the bill. So right now, questions for Lindsay on her analysis. Representative Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, with respect to Lindsay's mention of my question to the Public Utilities Commission, we did receive an email from the PUC, and with respect to that matter that I raised, Chapter 660, the language from the commission was that Commission Rule Chapter 660 do not contain provisions that would make LD 1847 redundant. So I do consider that question to have been answered and appreciate the follow-up from the PUC.
Other questions for Lindsay, our analyst? Representative Cuddy?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Ms. Laxon, for your analysis of the bill. Regarding the piece that was brought up several times about scenarios wherein a disconnection might be necessary under emergency circumstances or something, and notification would be difficult. Has there been any language drafted around that? Is that something that if we were to suggest an amendment around that, you're comfortable drafting, or would you need guidance on that?
If the committee wanted to, we're looking for language like that. I don't have anything prepared already, but I would be more than happy to work on that.
Other questions for Lindsay? Okay, and Scott, if you could lower your hand, please. That's okay. So Seth, I understand that you say your question has been answered from the PUC, so we don't have to go to the PUC. So why don't we start off with CMP? I think there were 2 questions directed to CMP or its representative, and then we can go on to the consumer-owned utilities. So I'm looking for, on the attendees, who do we have here from CMP that we can beam over at this point? I can't.
I think it's Linda Ball. I'll bring her over.
Okay. And I'd ask you also to bring over Deb Hart too, because depending upon who we get to first, we may be able to ask Deb our question. So Deb, since you got here first, I'm going to ask or have you respond to the committee's question first. Can you provide information on what we asked?
I can. I can't give you a specific dollar figure, but first of all, Senator Lawrence and Representative Barry, members of the committee, I did want to apologize that I was not able to be with you at your public hearing. I had sort of an emergency going on that day. I did submit testimony, neither for nor against, and I was very struck when Senator Lawrence, you talked about that kind of testimony this morning, because you know, it would be hard for us to oppose a bill like this because it's not something that the COUs specifically would do. They function much more like a municipal entity. They would never send somebody out to threaten a disconnection. They're part of their communities. The quick answer to your question is it would be somewhat of a reprogramming cost. They anticipated in the thousands of dollars, not huge, but there would be a cost to reprogram, specifically because the way that it works now is it's on a 30-day disconnect, it would now be up to 60. So, you know, if that's something that they have to do, it's something they would prefer not to, because it's not in their DNA to operate that way. They would not do that in their community. So I'm not sure that that's, you know, they haven't got a specific answer. They would have to, you know, submit it to the people that do their programming systems in order to put this into place. So yes, there is a cost.
Great. Representative Grochowski, you have a question for Deb Hart from the Consumer-Owned Utilities.
Yeah, I do, and it's related to what you just said. I think your main point was because of the way consumer and utilities operate, and the understanding they have of their constituency, because their constituency are their bosses and their owners, that this just wouldn't happen, which I believe to be true. I think it goes back to what I couldn't help but discuss a little bit during the public hearing, which was I don't know that we can't just apply common sense, and that we need to turn to computer programming to do our thinking for us. So I just wonder, this bill I don't think requires that your billing system be reprogrammed to note which of these facilities they are. So I wonder, I mean, do you feel comfortable that the consumer and utilities could adhere to the requirements of the bill, which is just don't be disconnecting these facilities without proper notice, without having to do programming and without having to put that cost on the ratepayers for, I think, something that the employees seem to already have the capacity to do?
Well, and to your point, Representative Gronkowski, you know, it's sort of a chicken and an egg kind of a scenario. Do you have to put the programming in place for specific entities, i.e. these public service facilities, in anticipating that nothing would ever happen? So is there a cost? Yes, there is. I can't stress enough that, you know, when we discussed this, we had a long conversation about any scenario when you would have to disconnect them. And I think the water utilities came in and said that there are scenarios when you might have to, if there was a reason why you had to disconnect because there was some kind of an event that would mean that you wouldn't want the power to be attached to the facility at that time. So I don't know if that's answering your question or not, or giving you any confidence that these more locally owned municipal acting utilities would not be sending somebody out to disconnect power for non-payment of a bill.
Representative Grochowski, any follow-up?
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you. I think what I'm processing in my head is it doesn't seem like there's ever a time, but correct me if I'm wrong, that this would happen through an automated system and there isn't a human involved in the actual disconnection. Like I would worry about programming if this activity were a fully programmable task, and then you'd need to code, you know, if you see, you know, if this equals 1, do not do X, like that's the logic train, but the human being is what's doing the disconnection, right? So there's not any automatic outcome that we're looking to prevent. Is that accurate?
I can certainly go back and double check with them, but what I was being told was there is right now it's on a 30-day, you know, once you're in the period of time when you can actually do disconnections, this would now move that to 60 days. So that would be a difference. I'm not a programmer, so I'm not a cartographer either, so I can't. I know, that's why I'm answering it that way. I'm happy to follow up with them. That was the question that, you know, I heard the Representative Foster ask and the response that I was given. Okay,
thank you. I think that's 30-day to 60-day. I could see that part being something that's more automated. But I personally feel comfortable having employees understand this is something that you don't do. If you happen to be dispatched to this place, like don't do this. So I'm not sure if that costs us a lot of money to just empower people to do a great job, which I know they want to do. But thank you for all that info.
You're welcome.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Hart, for being here. In conjunction with what was just discussed, I will say we all, I think, know that when you talk about problem solving, we have to anticipate what we've heard cases of comedy of errors, if you will, whether it's programmed into the system or not, or it's a human error or human decision type process. And I would suggest we want to make sure that, for instance, with the COUs, that we prepare for the future, if you will, when maybe we don't have an employee that we can depend on that's going to make the right decision. That aside, Ms. Hart, thank you for your testimony. I do have a question. I don't anticipate, I haven't seen any, and maybe it's just lacking on my part, an amendment or amendments to this proposed bill yet. But would you agree that even COUs may be faced with the time when they may have to disconnect a customer and or customers for whatever reason, damage from a storm, they've got to disconnect due to a fire down the road, whatever, where that the current language may present a problem to a COU like it would to a water utility or an IOU? Would that not be the case?
I think it would be. And I really had not focused on that until we were in the public hearing and I was hearing those very real life examples of when you would have to disconnect. That's not the same as non-payment of a bill, obviously. And I think when you're talking about utilities that respond to a board of directors, I mean, they have certain ways that they function, and sending someone out to disconnect a public service facility is not something that the COUs would do. I again was struck that there are instances where you might have to do it, and you might. I mean, I don't work in the utility field on the boots on the ground, but I can imagine if there was an emergency, the first thing you want to do is cut that power off, and it might be before the notification. I would think that they would work in tandem. I'm pretty sure they probably would, but I'm just speculating that that's the way it would work.
Representative Foster, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Deb Hart from the consumer-owned utilities, I should say. Thank you. We'll now go on to our question, which was directed at one of our investor-owned utilities, specifically to CMP, and we have Linda Ball here. Do you need a refresher on the question, or do you understand what the question that was asked?
I think I understand what the questions were. Thank you.
Okay.
So one of the questions I know is how many CMP accounts we believe would be subject to the rule. Barring any redefinition of public safety facility, we looked at all of our municipally coded accounts, and in total we have 8,097 that we're aware of at this point. One of our concerns in our testimony was that it would be helpful if we were partnering with the municipalities to be sure we have all of the accounts coded. So my preference would be that at least annually we send out a list to each municipality of what we think their particularly coded accounts are and have them validate that for us so that we don't inadvertently miss anything. I think that would be safer for municipalities and for the utilities to make sure that we don't accidentally not code something. That would be especially important if municipalities were turning on new services or creating new accounts. I would hope that they would let us know that they should be coded specially as well. But at the moment, 8,100. I think the other question is there was some confusion over where our billing services are provided. And we talked in the last hearing about that being here in Augusta. It's a group here at the AGO or the Augusta General Office Building. The functions that are not here in Maine are strictly things like payment processing, and the majority of our payment processing takes place in Boston, but anything that isn't easily processed comes again here to Augusta, to a remittance group here at the general office. And then bill print services are consolidated. I believe that they're out of New York. They're not out of Maine. Beyond that, I was looking strictly at customer service functions. All of our other customer service functions are here in Maine. I didn't look at more broad Avangrid service company functions, but strictly for customer service, we are located here in Maine.
Great, thank you very much, Linda. Are there questions for Linda Ball from Central Maine Power? Representative Berry.
I think you're
Sorry,
on.
I was muted. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Linda. So my question, I guess I do have a question on that last point. So there were a number of customer service functions that were farmed out and talked about extensively in the Liberty audit. I'm sure you recall that there was a great deal of turnover, a lot of dropped calls. This was, I believe, a firm from overseas. It may have been India, but there was. Are you saying that circumstance has gone away? Is no longer the case, and all customer service is now performed here in Maine?
I don't have any recollection of any firms overseas or in India being mentioned for customer service functions in the Liberty audit, nor do we have any customer service functions.
Thank you. I will pull up the discussion, the extensive discussion of the third-party customer service problems, and share that with the committee. The question of payment processing, I think, is important here, because it sounds as if the primary reason, the primary driver of these misunderstandings, where it sounds like the municipal community is aware of 3 instances of public safety facility shutoffs or near shutoffs for non-payment, had to do with the processing of payments, had to do with the account misunderstandings of the account to which the payment was to be attributed. So is payment processing, in fact, where the problem may be solved?
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. What processes in the payment processing in Boston is checks and payments to come in with an account number on them. If a payment comes in without an account number, it comes here to Augusta to look at. In at least one instance where the payment wasn't applied, there was no account number noted, and there was a notation that said invoice number, but our invoice numbers are 12 digits, and what was provided was 7 digits. There is no automatic way to look that up, either in Boston or here in Augusta. So my folks here in Augusta actually called one of the towns and left messages for the bookkeeper, and in fact sent an email to the bookkeeper. And we did not receive responses to those inquiries to say, we have this check, how would you like us to apply it? So after several attempts, they did send the check back to the town. And then we made a visit to talk about having someone call to let us know what they'd like done. I again am going to say I would not categorize that as a visit to disconnect service. We make a lot of visits to customers to try to talk about accounts if we can't reach them any other way. So any problematic payments, going back to the original question, anything that isn't an account number would come here to Augusta. So do I think the problem is with our processing center? I really don't. In that case, we didn't have an account number or an invoice number to apply it to. There are a number of different accounts under the same name. The dollar amounts, when I looked into this, didn't match invoices. So I thought maybe it's simple. Maybe the check says $37.98 and I can find an invoice for $37.98, and I couldn't. So there were a lot of complicating factors that made it hard to apply that payment.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I may.
Barry, go ahead.
Linda, I assume that CMP does offer customers the ability to consolidate different meters under a single account.
We have ways to consolidate different meters under a single account, yes.
Okay, thank you. And one final question, just quickly, I think I know the answer, but if we did go forward with a bill, and let's just say for the sake of argument that it exempted situations where, that it included only situations that were for non-payments, would the costs that you project that would be incurred by CMP be categorized entirely under O&M?
So that's a harder question to answer than it might sound like on the surface. And I forgive me, I do tend to get buried in details sometimes, so I'll share a few of them with you. The bill as written prohibits disconnection for non-payment, which we completely agree with. I can operationalize that pretty easily. the O&M cost involved that would be entirely O&M to collaborate with the utility, with the municipalities to make sure we've got all the right accounts coded. And I can intercept any account that way and say it cannot be disconnected without management review. And that ensures more phone conversations, more visits, trying to figure out what to do. What's incredibly expensive on our end and would be a capital cost would be reprogramming the system to not follow the usual Dunning path to send notices and make outbound phone calls and make visits if we need to try to inspire a conversation with municipalities. That would require a massive rewrite of our entire credit and collection system to sectionalize out accounts coded in this specific way. That is a huge undertaking. That would be a capital expense, and I would expect it to be very expensive.
So what I hear you saying, Ms. Ball, is that CMP would require a very expensive investment of capital, which requires typically around a 9% profit for the equity portion of that investment. Thank you. That's the only question I have.
I can't speak to the 9% return
It's
part of it.
9.25% at present.
I would say it would require a massive rewrite of the system to create a separate Dunning, a separate collections path for specific accounts. If you wanted notices, disconnection notices, to also provide 60 days, because these would be the only accounts subject to that. So we have different collections paths for residential customers and non-residential customers according to existing statutes. This would require a third tranche that would run completely different from anything else. If you're talking about notices in addition to actual disconnections, again, we can avoid disconnections very, very easily. And we've already put that work in place. So our field staff is already empowered to know that they do not disconnect public safety facilities. Our contact center has coding to know that there are steps for public safety facilities and it stops short of disconnection, but the disconnection notices still go out like every other business customer. The automated phone calls still go out, the manual phone calls still go out. But it stops short of the actual disconnection.
Sounds like we need to hire some people to figure this out and stop making investments in computer systems. Thank you.
Can I respond? There is no way for people to figure it out. It is an automated system. We would have to change the automated system if you want different versions of disconnection notices strictly for municipalities. That requires everything's automated. We don't have people, typing notices. So we'd have to change the entire system and create.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm done.
Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Ball, for your being at this work session. Along that same line, my question was in regard to costs, which would eventually go on to ratepayers, as I understand it. When Versant was here for the bill hearing, they estimated the cost would be somewhat smaller probably than for you folks, but they were talking tens of thousands of dollars to make the changes to their system. Do you have any idea when you talk about changing the programming part of the billing system to account for this, what that might be for CMP or the estimated 8,100 accounts? Thank you.
I don't have an estimate. I can certainly engage our IT department and get an estimate for the committee, and I'm happy to do that. I can start that effort today.
Any follow-up, Representative Foster?
No, thank you. I would hold off, Ms. Ball, on that until we find out where this goes. Thank you.
And Ms. Ball, I do have one question now. On your billing system, do you go through periodic rewrites of the billing system, updates to coding and things like that on your system?
We do. We are managing that system every day, sometimes to provide enhancements. It was quite an effort recently to make changes to change all of the notices in the wintertime for residential customers to be past due reminder notices instead of disconnection notices. That was a significant amount of effort because we are always regression testing our changes to make sure we're not inadvertently causing other problems. But that was just changing letters themselves and not the entire process. And that still was quite an effort. But in terms of code, yes, we have entire groups dedicated to managing their code and making updates as needed.
And so is it possible that this change could be done at some time with a system rewrite in order to save expense?
I would have to talk with our IT department. This isn't really a simple code change. It's developing an entirely new path for specific customers. So we'd have to make sure that they're coded in a way now to avoid a disconnection, but we'd have to create all new communications for them that followed these rules. And that would require, I think, completely new code as opposed to rewriting anything that exists, because the same rules would still apply for existing residential and existing non-residential accounts. This adds a third category. So I think it's complicated.
I understand that. I guess my question goes back to some of my background as a computer analyst. I know when systems, you have periodic system updates, system changes, things like that. But periodically, every system goes through a rewrite. Over a period of years, it's done to increase the efficiency of the program and to do different things. And my question is if this was included in a system rewrite, would that not avoid some of the costs?
I wish I had a definitive answer. You probably know more about rewriting code than I do, Senator Lawrence. But I can find out an answer to that as well. We don't typically rewrite end to end. We're adjusting very specific pieces of code for specific needs. So I think that might be where the little bit of a difference is.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions for Ms. Ball? Seeing none, thank you. And I believe this brings us to the end of our questions that we had from the hearing. Representative Foster?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, I have a question for the PUC. I believe they have someone in attendance.
Okay, that's great. I thought I apologize. When Representative Berry said his question had been answered, I didn't realize you had a separate one. So if we could beam somebody across from the PUC, that would be great. Okay, Derek and Deirdre are here, so I assume Derek's going to answer and Deirdre is going to monitor. So Derek, why don't you go ahead and Representative Foster will direct his question and you can answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, both of you. In the PUC's follow-up to LD 1847, you mentioned that the PUC felt that if the committee decided to do this by asking or directing the PUC through rulemaking to make these changes, that's something that you could do. Is that correct?
Yes, we could do that through a rulemaking.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, follow up.
Go ahead, Representative Foster.
With that in mind, would it be if that were the case, would it be such that you would work with both COUs and IOUs as you developed how this would be done through rulemaking to with the ratepayers' interest in mind, as far as you've heard us talk about costs of making these changes if the statute is put in and to direct it to be done? But I'm assuming, and the reason I'm asking the question is that if the PUC does this with the utilities, including water and others, that you would do so with the taking the ratepayers, the cost to ratepayers in consideration as you do it, and develop a process that would be the least harmful to ratepayers. Is that somewhat the case? Thank you.
Deirdre, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I think you're in better position having done more rulemakings.
Okay, so we may end up doing a rulemaking anyway, to bring more specificity into the process. So with that caveat, yeah, the way that the bill is written now, it applies to all public utilities. So I think we would have to do multiple rulemakings, probably open chapter 660 as well as 815. And in our rulemaking process, we would ask for comments from all interested parties, all affected public utilities, as well as any other stakeholders. And obviously we would want to implement the process in the most efficient way that accomplishes what the objective is, but in the most efficient way and most cost-effective way for ratepayers.
Representative Foster, are you all set?
Yes, thank you.
Other questions for the PUC while we have them here? Representative Berry?
Thank you. Thank you to Ms. Schneider and Mr. Davidson for being here. And I appreciated the unusual position of support for the bill. I was shocked by the conversation that just took place that essentially said that CMP, at least, I don't understand what the other utilities, what Versant's position is on this, but that they would actually require additional significant, I think it said very expensive capital investment. And of course, that means profit built in as well that we would have to pay for. It is astonishing to me that would be required. And I'd like to hear from the PUC, couldn't a list simply be compiled and staff for the utilities instructed to, when they get to a place on that list, Maine only has 488 municipalities, write that notice, have that form in your satchel, write that notice just like an old-fashioned parking ticket. Here's your notice. We're going to have to shut you down if you don't pay your bill, and proceed accordingly. I mean, that seems to me to be an operations and maintenance expense. And it makes zero sense to me that we need to invest in new billing systems to prevent this kind of basic, to require this kind of basic awareness of public safety. Can you speak to that parking ticket approach and why that wouldn't work?
I think those are certainly issues that we would examine in a rulemaking. And I don't know that we could answer this morning that question, but I certainly can say that in a rulemaking process, that's something that would be explored, is how do we implement this in as economical a way as possible, the least burdensome to the utilities, but also that ensures that you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, which is the objective of the bill in the first place. Sorry, that's probably not the most definitive answer.
Representative Berry?
No, that's fine. It sounds like the answer is no. You can't think of a reason why that would not work.
We would look for the most economical way that we could make it work. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Representative Berry, any follow-up?
All set.
Derek, to follow up on my computer programming question and rate making, I assume when utilities come before you to do rates, there's a certain amount of maintenance that has to go on every year and continuously, and that's pre-programmed into their budgets. And then there are a certain period of times where they have major system rewrites that they have to include in a new rate making. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, there's O&M component, which is, the maintenance, I think, and then there's some capital investment that would be if they had to purchase software and things like that. There is amounts embedded in rates for both of those things.
Okay. And so I guess the question and the question I'd like the PUC to get some perspective on, is this really a simple maintenance change that could be made in their current budget, or is it, as we're being told by CMP, a major rewrite that would have to be saved to another time? Do you think the PUC could help us answer that?
I think we can do our best. It is a bit of a challenge. The utility obviously has a much better sense itself for what changes they would need to make, and without having a better idea on ourselves on how their system might work, I think it's a bit of a challenge for us to be specific. But I think we could answer in generalities about what the process would look like. Deirdre, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I would think, like you said earlier, if there was a rulemaking for this, that could be all hashed out in that process, and understanding if the utility is coming forward, providing this is what we would need, the commission would look to see if that was reasonable, or if there was an alternative approach that could be more cost effective and efficient to accomplish this. But I think without having all those details in front of us currently, it's hard to say definitively yes or no.
Okay, great. Any other questions for the PUC? Seeing none. Derek, Deirdre, thank you as usual. Okay, we now go into the part of our program that deals with committee deliberations. Representative Barry. I think you're muted again.
I've been clumsy with the mute button today. I apologize. Mr. Chair, I was wondering if we could hear from Michael Kraus, who I have a specific question for. He's in the attendees.
And Michael Kraus is from which group?
It's the, I believe, the Professional Firefighters Association of Maine.
Okay, and I do not see, oh, there's Michael. Michael, why don't you come on over? Yep. Do you have video, Michael? There you are. Go ahead, Mike.
Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see my senator working hard up there in Augusta. Appreciate all your efforts. I'm here to assist the committee any way I can. I represent the Professional Firefighters of Maine, representing over 40 public sector fire departments, EMS programs, and over 1,400 professional firefighters and paramedics. So anything I can do to help the committee support LD 1847 would be greatly appreciated.
So Representative Barry, do you have a specific question for Mike?
I do. Mr. Kraus, thank you for being here. And I know you couldn't make the public hearing and you understand the difference between the two. My question is there a list somewhere of fire departments in the state, and would it be a fairly simple matter to just give that list to the techs that go out in the field and shut down fire departments?
I can provide you a list of all the fire departments paid and volunteer in the state. I work very closely with my counterparts, the Maine Fire Chiefs Association, who represents all the fire chiefs from all those paid and volunteer departments, as well as the EMS organizations in the state, because we do, as you may know, we do have private sector providers out there as well that could be impacted by utility shutoff. But I can definitely provide all that information to you. when you need it. I can get that today if you not like.
Great.
Thank
Any follow-up question, Seth?
If we were to do that, Mr. Kraus, is it your opinion that it might help save a life someday?
Yeah, I mean, shutting off. I mean, and excuse me. I was quite concerned when I saw the examples that you raised, sir, in your testimony that having a public safety facility lose its power it could have a critical effect on mission readiness and a mission response for our departments. As you so articulately stated in your testimony, the fire departments, obviously, like any other business, relies on having the utilities available. But most of our equipment is either maintained and charged, runs on batteries. Life support systems that we take in the field runs on batteries, so they need to be charged 24/7. All of our fire apparatus are plugged into outlets to keep the various systems that are on board up and running. So yeah, losing power would have a major impact on mission readiness and response.
Great. And one final question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Mr. Krause, if a given fire department facility received a notice, tucked in the door, maybe on, bright orange paper that said that, you will be, disconnected in 60 days for non-payment. If you don't respond, would that be sufficient to get the attention and make sure it ran up the chain and that the billing situation got sorted out?
Well, I hope with the technology we had today, we could do something a little bit better than slipping something under the door, even though some of our utilities still do that when they refuel or whatnot. But yeah, notice on the door might help, right? Because I'm pretty sure if a fire chief found out that his or her utilities were going to be shut off, I'm pretty sure he would go over to the town hall, city hall, to make sure that those payments were made in a timely fashion.
Great.
Our fire chiefs are pretty good at maintaining their budgets. They don't necessarily pay the bills, so that they could be out of the loop.
Yeah, I think that's right. Thank you.
Representative Foster.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Kraus, for being here. I just want to, I think we all agree that we don't want to see any emergency facility lose its power in this way without foreknowledge. But just to allay the concerns of anyone who might be out there listening, and I'm assuming the committee all knows this, but I'm up in rural Maine, a lot of small volunteer fire departments, ambulance garages, that kind of thing. Is it safe to assume that, as with the cases I've looked into, that for the most part, there is backup power of some kind or a backup plan provided for loss of power? Because we all know from time to time, these facilities will lose power. And a lot of the things that have been listed that you've just mentioned that are necessary to be charged and everything still need to be available for use. So just to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about here. Thank you.
Yeah, Representative Foster, I think you're correct that most of our fire departments, and I can double check if you'd like this, and I can do some research, but I think most of our departments have backup generators for that purpose. I mean, because as you know, they're spread out through our communities, and if there's a power loss unrelated to a non-payment shutdown, the fire departments still have to operate. So they do have, for the most part, they do have backup generators to some degree. That's not going to keep them going forever.
Are you all set, Representative Foster?
Yeah, thank you. I just, and understand, I'm not trying to minimize the concern that's been raised by this bill, but I just want people to be aware that may not know that those backups are out there. Thank you.
Representative Grochowski.
Thank you. It's not a question for Mr. Kraus, although great to see you. I just want to follow up on your statement, Representative Foster, in that I think one of the previous or in our public hearing, we heard, and this is my personal experience as a firefighter, that backup generator is not necessarily on demand and on call. It's something that the firefighters have to activate, especially because it's very expensive to set up a system like that for a big fire department. And so, anytime a big storm was coming, we were at the station, we were prepared to do that. But if something is disconnected that you have no awareness of, in the middle of the day on a sunny day, and there's a volunteer fire department, no one's there to know. Next time they're at that station could be for an emergency and they could find they have no power. So, I appreciate you trying to let our constituents know that it's okay, there's a backup, but I think it's actually more accurate to say there may not be a backup because the firefighters may not know they need to activate the backup.
Representative, it's always a pleasure to see you, and I appreciate your support of our first responders. And I think you're correct that, even though our fire departments do have generator capacity, probably some of the smaller departments don't have the automatic backup, like propane automatic kick in, where others would have generators in the station that they could pull out of storage, pull out of off a truck, and activate and provide power. Again, for the short term, those are not long-term solutions. And at the same time, as you indicated, in some of those fire departments that are not staffed 24/7, like the volunteer departments in the rural areas, nobody would know unless they went into the station to see there was no power. It's not something that would automatically notify those volunteers. So you're correct that in the rural areas, it could be problematic for them.
Representative Berry, another question for Michael Kraus.
It's not a question for Michael Kraus, but I do think this is an incredibly important piece of the discussion. It was also stated to us by the Fire Chiefs Association that many rural stations don't have a generator that's capable of powering the whole facility. So while if they receive notice, which is a big if, or if they are there when the disconnection happens on a blue sky day, which is unlikely, they still won't have the full capacity to power all of the public safety equipment. But I don't think we can underestimate the extent of the issue around notice on a blue sky day, because one of my towns, for example, which Representative Foster may or may not think of as rural, but it is a small town without even a town manager. The selectmen do most of the work, or select board, and there are only three members of the volunteer fire department in the town of Bowdoin, Maine. All of them have full-time jobs. So the chances that they will be there if on a day like today the power is unexpectedly cut they're not slim. The chances are zero. So I don't think that we can, in all honesty, with Maine people, can assure them that things are fine, because they're not.
So before we get too far into the debate, I want to finish up with questions for Michael Kraus, and then we can debate among our committee. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kraus? Seeing none, thank you for being here to answer my question. And the senator Mike was referring to is myself, not Senator Vitelli. So Mike and Brenda are constituents of mine and longtime friends, and they live on one of my favorite streets in the town of Kittery, Happy Avenue.
Very good.
So it's good to see you, Mike.
All right, take care, Senator. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for your work.
You're welcome. So now we're on to debate and discussion. And if we're ready, I'd like to have a motion before the committee so we can enter into debate or discussion. Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have heard with interest what CMP had to say today. I think that changes a little bit what I had intended to move. But I appreciated their testimony from the public hearing that there are sometimes situations where power does need to be disconnected because of an outage. You know, maybe a car hits a pole and they need to shut down power in town, which includes, by the way, the fire department, but you know, while the line workers are fixing that section of the grid. So I think that was a very helpful point by Central Maine Power. I'm inclined to limit the scope of this bill to disconnections that are for non-payment. So that's one amendment that I would offer. I would also offer, in light of today's discussion, that the Public Utilities Commission should, in their rulemaking around this, require that the solution that is employed falls under operations and maintenance, or O&M.
I don't know whose phone that is, but if they could turn it off or turn it down. That might have been mine. I do not know.
I won't point any
fingers. It wasn't my phone. It might have been my computer.
Senator Lawrence, so that's number two. This should be done for example, with that parking ticket approach that I mentioned. That would be strictly an operations and maintenance expenditure. There's no CapEx needed. And last but not least, I would amend the bill to require that that each violation simply incur an administrative penalty. And that's my motion to pass with those amendments.
Moved, ought to pass as amended. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Vitelli. Debate or discussion? Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I think this is an extremely important issue that we're trying to address here today. None of us wants to see our local volunteer fire department or ambulance garage or any other public facility that's involved as a first responder type in that type of situation have their power off and they don't know it. But I do think that rather than add to statute, as this bill would do, language which may have unintended consequences, that I would be much more comfortable for the committee to direct the PUC through rulemaking to handle this issue. And I think that during that process, not only will they address Representative Berry's concerns about doing this in a most cost-effective way with all the utilities involved, including the COUs, but also they would foresee and have a chance to initiate language that would prevent some of the unintended consequences that we may overlook with this language. So that would be my position regarding the motion, that instead of moving forward with this bill, that we move forward with the committee working with the PUC to do that through rulemaking. Thank you.
Other debate or discussion? Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lindsay, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but the bill does also provide for rulemaking by the PUC if they consider it necessary. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other debate or discussion? I will chime in by saying I'm supportive of the bill. I'm not convinced by CMP's argument that it would require a major system rewrite to incorporate this. They build into their budget a certain amount of system maintenance in every rate increase, and I'm not convinced that this couldn't be done within that existing budget, or the PUC could not work with them to find a inexpensive way to do this. Given the critical importance of what we're doing, that argument just doesn't persuade me. Senator Vitelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize, I may have missed this, but looking over Lindsay's notes, there was a question or suggestion that we maybe need to more clearly define a public safety facility. Has that been taken care of in our discussions and in the questions that we've received answers to at this point?
Representative Barry, do you have a response to that?
Thank you. I guess I should defer to Lindsay. Can you recall, or maybe Senator Vitelli, you have it in front of you, who posed that question?
Bear with me one moment. So the suggestion to clarify the definition of public safety facilities, specifically with reference to the Maine's County Emergency Management Agencies, I guess there's a list, that came from Versant.
Thank you. So as the sponsor in my research on the matter, I decided to include the existing statutory definition of public safety facility. So that is already defined in Title 30A, Section 55222. And in addition, there is this provision that the Department of Public Safety be involved and shall be consulted with, as well as MMA is consulted with it in adopting rules. So I think that is well taken care of in the bill as originally presented.
Thank you, Representative Barry.
Other debate or discussion? Is the Representative Grochowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Rep. Foster. I just want to make sure I understand. Is it that you are interested in seeing this happen through rules so that if there needs to be adjustment, it's not, on the legislature to fix that? Or, because in some ways I think the outcome is the same, and I'm just curious why you prefer one approach versus the other approach, statute versus rules, statute and rules versus unallocated language and rules, I guess is the more appropriate way to phrase that.
Am I free to answer, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Representative Foster, please do.
Thank you, sir. So when I read the response from the PUC to my question and comments, first of all, let me say, whenever we add to law, I have a concern about that. We have enough laws as it is. That's one reason. The second part is when we add to law, that's the way it is usually. Now, I think the PUC testified that they will, even if this bill passes as is, they are going to have to do rulemaking changes as a result of the bill passing to accommodate statute. But in their response, they also mentioned that if we directed them if we change this bill and said we're going to direct the PUC to do rulemaking to address this issue, they also suggest that, and I think Representative Barry has left this still in his bill, that we would drop the portion that the Department of Public Safety must also authorize the disconnection. And that's another piece that when I refer to unintended consequences, that may be something that, and I don't want to suggest that I know what Representative Barry was thinking, but that may be something that unintentionally we've added much more to this that is not needed. So that was my thought. If we amended this bill just basically to say we direct the PUC to work with the utilities and do this through rulemaking, I would be fine with it. The end result, I agree with. We need to make sure that, and as I said before, through a comedy of errors, we know that when things like this happen, as I think even from testimony of those involved in the incident where it did happen, it basically resulted from a comedy of errors, both human and what was programmed into the system, if you will. And we want to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'd be comfortable with the PUC taking care of that for us. Thank you.
Representative Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My mute button works. It's just not me it's working with it. The direction that think Representative Foster wants to take, and I do appreciate the concern about not adding to statute more than necessary. A question to our analyst: would if the committee were to say we want to do this in rule but not in statute, would you be able to? Is that sufficient to draft this?
So you're looking to basically direct the PUC to engage in rulemaking to address these issues, and is this going to be, actually, yeah, if you could clarify, that would be helpful.
And I'll turn that back to Representative Foster, because I don't want to represent his amendment. I think it's an important question. If we were to go down that road, how would it be drafted?
Representative Foster?
Yes, thank you. Well, my thought would be that we would give them the latitude to address this as they normally would any issue in rulemaking, looking at statute that currently exists and at both the utilities, interested parties, as they said, taking into consideration the eventual cost to ratepayers, no matter if it's just putting that orange tag on the door, as they consider what the best option is to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. And that once they did rulemaking, that it would come back before the committee for a final review, if you will, that they could explain to us, here's what we proposed in rulemaking and here's why. And then I would think we would probably agree with it. Thank you.
So to clarify, Representative Foster, are you saying that your proposal would be not to pass a bill on this, simply to request of the PUC that they do this and then come back and consider legislation?
I think that there are two routes. One is we have the bill basically be the direction for the PUC to do this through rulemaking, which is quite different than what the bill is now. Although they will have to do rulemaking, I understand that once the bill passes, but we're being more directive with the current bill language. And the other is that if they do it through rulemaking, they don't have and come back to us for a final review of that, that there would not be the necessity for passing a bill. In other words, through rulemaking, they would have changed the process and directed the utilities on how to behave when this issue comes up. And then basically our purview, obviously, if we didn't agree with that it wasn't going to have the end effect and result that we're looking for, then certainly another bill could be put in to address it. But I don't think that would be necessary from what I've heard from them and from the utilities so far on this. Thank you.
So I guess my question is more of technical. It sounds like what you're proposing is an amendment to Representative Berry's amendment, not an indication that you're going to vote ought not to pass.
Under the current, the way the bill is currently amended, I'll say I would probably be an ought not to pass, and my amendment would be to instead direct the PUC to do this through rulemaking, if that's what you're asking me.
Yes. So I think I understand, because we have to deal with the questions in the order in which they're proposed. So an amendment to an amendment has priority over voting on the substantive amendment. So Representative Foster has offered an amendment to Representative Berry's amendment. First, I'll ask Representative Berry if he will accept that as a friendly amendment to his amendment, or do we want to go to a vote on whether to amend it?
Well, yeah, I think to amend my motion with a pure rulemaking would be hard, because the motion has some very specific guidance that can only be statutory. And I guess I want to ask a question of the of Representative Foster. So if it were major substantive and we passed it this year, and there was a rulemaking over the summer, and then the major substantive rulemaking came back, let's say next January, to this committee in the 131st legislature, it would then become effective probably Well, possibly if it were passed as an emergency, in February or so at the earliest. More commonly, it might be as a non-emergency, so in September, October. So 18 months out. And I'm just wondering if you thought that through and considered the potential risk to public safety of that delay.
No, you got me there, Representative. That is certainly an issue. However, let's just suppose for a moment that this all came forward and the proposal was that we direct the PUC to do this through rulemaking, period. They would do so in a timely fashion that they're capable of, whatever that may mean. When it would actually come into play, I don't know. And I don't know that it's going to be any quicker or take longer than if we pass the bill, it gets signed, and then they do the rulemaking to put the language in that they need to address to the utilities. So I'm not sure if one's faster than the other or not. But I would suggest that if we just direct them to do the rulemaking on this to solve the problem, and they do it in a way that's beneficial to the ratepayers and to the public safety groups, that in that case, certainly the committee would want to review it, even though it may have already gone into effect by the time the next legislature rolls in. This committee would want to review that and then certainly could address it with a new bill if it didn't meet your concerns. So I'll defer to you folks who've been around forever that, you tell me which timeline is going to take the longest, or because I do feel it's important to get this done in a timely fashion. I'm not, again, I don't minimize the risk that's out there for this, but so I guess I'll leave that to the chairs to decide or look at, or the analysts to decide, is one faster than the other. But I think, again, if we had just said, this is something we need to do it, let's do it through rulemaking, it would be sort of a moot point. Thank you.
Representative Grochowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just to, what I think I am hearing from Representative Foster, and I think it can be done, so maybe this is a question for Lindsay, is that what he's proposing is a resolve. So we would take the language in the bill and turn it into a resolve that was the framework that the PUC used to then make their rules. And we'd want to use routine technical rules so that it could go into effect without having to come back to the legislature for approval. And it's already written as routine technical rules. And then we could keep an eye on it. If we don't like what they've done, then we can fix that through the legislature, so that it would be in effect in that time period between, and we would fix it anyhow. So I think that's what I'm hearing. And Lindsay, maybe you can clarify, is there any reason we can't take the exact language of this bill and basically frame it into a resolve and have that be passed along so that the PUC has the specificity that we want to make their rules, but it doesn't get put in allocated language in statute?
I don't see why not. I think that based on what you're describing, that is doable. I'd want to, being newer to this process, that's something I certainly would check out and come back to the committee, but setting this up as a resolve to direct the PUC to engage in rulemaking, I think I'd want a little clarity as to what specifically the committee wants that rulemaking to be. Would this be based on the bills originally drafted, or including Representative Berry's proposed changes? But that doesn't seem problematic to me.
So just to go over where we're at, we have an amendment, a proposed motion on the floor from Representative Berry to pass it as a bill, ought to pass as amended. We've had some discussion of doing a resolve. Lindsay says she would need to do a little bit of research on that. In order for us to do that, we would need a tabling motion. So I guess the question for the committee is, do we want to go ahead with a vote on Representative Berry's motion, or is there something else you want to do at this point? Representative Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a concern about timing here, and it seems to me that if a rulemaking is required and that rulemaking takes time and involves significant public process as described earlier, that this could drag out. And if the committee were to provide clear statutory prohibitions now, that would be the clearest and most immediate way to address the problem. I am also concerned that the PUC, and I don't want to speak for them, but I worry a little bit that they might need some statutory guidance or clarity if some of the items in the bill and the motion that I made with the amendments are going to stick. In other words, I'm not sure if in the resolve language, I'm willing to look into it with them. Perhaps they can come and comment, but I'm not sure if in the resolve language they can, that we can say that an administrative penalty will be applied for each violation. I'm not sure that in the resolve language that we can say that the solution will be arrived at in such a way as to avoid capital expense and only incur what's called O&M, or operations and maintenance expense. There's a fair number of parameters, the 60 days, the consult. I mean, it becomes a pretty long resolve, and where it doesn't have the staying power of a statute, it may not give them all of the powers that they need to carry it out and enforce it. And then I also wonder about what would happen in future under future PUCs, where it wouldn't be in statute, it would simply be in a rule. Could a future PUC simply say, well, we don't think, the utility asked us to change this, so we're going to change it. And that troubles me greatly, that scenario. So I guess you can hear I'm leaning away from the resolve language because I don't think it's as clear and as durable, or even as quick. And I think the matter is time sensitive. I'll stop there.
Senator Grochowski. The motion on the floor is Representative Barry's motion ought to pass as amended as a bill.
Thank you. It occurs to me the fastest way to solve this problem would be to reach consensus, put an emergency preamble on this, and get a vote on it this month when the legislature is in session at some point. And I would like to work toward that goal if people feel that is appropriate. I guess I would also add that I hear Representative Barry, your point that having some kind of language in statute as the backstop versus letting the PUC ultimately over time sort of move away from what the original resolve was does have merit. And maybe there's some of it, maybe it is just the way we'd do it the way that it's done, or maybe there's some that goes into the unallocated rule making language. I'm willing to explore that, but I guess I'd be interested to hear if people believe this is as much of an emergency as I do and want to work toward that 2/3 support or more, 100% support, really.
I'll recognize Senator Vitelli. Oh, you have to unmute. Did we get you? I caught you off guard. Are you there? I can go on to Representative Cuddy at this point. Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Senator. There's a lot of new things sort of floating around, and Representative Grochowski just put her proposal out there, and I was actually intending on requesting a corner caucus And I think what I'm just going to do is put out there that I think I'm probably going to need one, but I'm not going to request one right now because I think there might be some discussion that needs to take place.
Senator Vitelli?
Yes, I would move to table.
Senator Vitelli has moved to table. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Berry. Are you seconding? Yes. Okay.
Yes, and then I have a question.
Okay. First of all those in favor of tabling, raise your hands. All those opposed, it's unanimous to table. And Representative Berry, you have a question.
I do. I would hope, given the amount of work before us, that we can resolve this today and not drag it out. I think this is a relatively simple matter, and we've had extensive public comment. So I'm hoping that we can come back after a brief corner caucus today and vote.
Okay, so I will suggest to the committee that we have a brief corner caucus of no more than 15 minutes. We come back at 12:45 and decide what we're going to do with this bill today. With that, I'll ask everyone to mute themselves and turn off their video, and we will be back. Great. It sounds like we've had our corner caucuses, and I'll just ask members to kind of migrate back to being online. And I do want to take a second to apologize to members of the committee for that phone call. It was on my end. I didn't realize. And one of the ways I get multiple screens is I have to borrow my daughter's laptop. And apparently she has it set up so her phone calls come through her laptop, which is a surprise to me. So, so I'm learning all the time.
Probably a good thing you didn't take the call on Mike.
It's very, very good. Especially, I think it was a spam call, she told me. So who knows what it could have been. Representative Barry, I understand you're proceeding with your motion as is.
That is my intent. I do want to say, Mr. Chair, that I appreciated the conversation about whether we could do this in rule, and you know, having thought it through, I really prefer the durability of the statute here, and I think, quite frankly, it's a little simpler for our analysts as well. But you know, most importantly, I think as a practical matter, it would be best that we simply enact this, give it the full force and gravity of statute, and do so as expeditiously as possible. And for that reason, I do want to amend my motion, if it's okay with my second, and that is to make it to add an emergency preamble.
Senator Vitale, are you there? Give her a moment. I think she's gone to another meeting. So we're in that unusual position of the person who made the second to not be there. So I understand that Representative Barry is withdrawing his original motion and making a new motion to amend with the amendment he had just suggested, and now looking for a second on that amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moved.
Is there a second on that amendment? Okay, I see Representative Cuddy. So any further debate or discussion on Representative Barry's motion to amend? Okay, why don't we proceed to a vote? Jason, if you want to call the vote.
Okay, Senator Lawrence.
Yes.
Senator Lawrence is a yes. Senator Vitale is absent currently. Senator Stewart is also not here. Representative Barry?
Yes.
Representative Barry is a yes. Representative Cuddy?
Yes.
Representative Cuddy is a yes. Representative Grohowski?
Is that a muted yes?
I don't think I'm muted, am I?
You were at the beginning, you aren't now. So your vote?
Yes.
Representative Grohowski is a yes. Representative Kessler?
Yes.
Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler?
Yes.
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs?
Yes.
Representative Sachs is a yes. Representative Wadsworth is absent. Representative Grignon is absent. Representative Foster?
No.
Representative Foster is a no. And Representative Carlo?
Yes.
Representative Carlo is a yes. That is one. 8 in favor and 1 no, with 4 absent.
Okay, 8 members having voted in the favor and 1 member in opposition and 4 members being absent, I'll declare the motion prevails. Great. So Lindsay, do we have anything else to do this afternoon?
We do not.
Okay.
So I will.
We are on for next Tuesday. I do see some hands up. Representative Foster, I think he was saying bye, so he has left. Representative Barry and then Representative Vitale.
No, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes, Representative Foster.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. I wasn't saying goodbye. Do I have an opportunity to put in a
I
No.
apologize. Yes, you're right. So what is your report going to be, Representative Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report would be to amend the bill requiring the commission to accomplish the intent of the bill through rulemaking. And I would also add to that an emergency preamble. Thank you.
So what will happen, Lindsay, is you'll work with Representative Foster to draft that to the committee. You'll have to determine whether that's a resolve or not, how we do that. And we're going to have a review of both the drafted form of Representative Berry's amendment and Representative Foster's amendment. It's not an opportunity without a motion for reconsideration for people to change their votes, but it will be a point for Representative Berry to sign off as saying that's what he wanted, and Representative Foster to sign off publicly and say that's what he wanted. So those will come up in a language review sometime in the future. Senator Vitelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if I have enough time to quickly register my vote as being in favor of the motion.
It's all up to leadership, you know. They are the ones who decide how we vote. Jason, does she still have time to record her vote?
Certainly.
Okay.
Senator
Thank
Vitelli.
Yay.
Senator Vitelli is a yes.
Lindsay, did you want to chime in on that?
I actually was wondering if we could just walk through. I want to make sure I understand the Representative Berry's amendment that the committee has now voted ought to pass as amended.
So what I would suggest, Lindsay, is you meet offline with Representative Berry, get it drafted up how he's proposing it, bring it back for the committee in language review. We'll have any questions. Same thing with Representative Foster. You meet with him, get the language drafted up, and then bring it back at a language review sometime in the future. I don't mean to cut you off, but that's really a one-on-one kind of conversation.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion this afternoon before we break? Okay, we're on next Tuesday, is it, Lindsay? And what's on our agenda?
Yes, you are on next Tuesday. You'll be hearing a presentation from the Public Utilities Commission and Efficiency Maine Trust. Also note that I sent out an email to the committee. This is not on the calendars. This isn't an EUT committee activity, but EUT has been invited to hear a presentation on solar array siting with the ACF committee. So I sent you the information. If anyone has questions, just let me know.
And that's that important issue that we've discussed in the past about, is siting of solar having an impact on agriculture? Any other thing people want to discuss? Life in general? No, we're all good. Okay, everybody have a good weekend, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.